Evening, everybody. I don't know what's happening with my start times. I'm gonna do I'm gonna do my best to try and bring them back into line, but obviously this is an hour later than I wanted to start. However, you were all very kind yesterday. It was nice to catch up with everybody. So thank you for that. And I'm gonna take a minute here to load up the game. I feel a little bad because I did take a minute to make some coffee. But of course, if the cost of coffee is a late start, that means that I'm not going to have Olaf here to congratulate me on the choice of coffee. But we will drink it in his honor. Anyways, I hope you're all looking forward to the weekend. I've got a busy one coming up, but I'm going to do my best to get the YouTube videos recorded early tomorrow, and I'm hoping that that will leave me some spare time to get a couple of other things done. I have been thinking quite a bit about what the stream looks like after House of Light is done. In one sense, not a whole lot changes, but I've really been thinking quite a bit of a few of the different games, not just that I want to cover, but that I think people have expressed some interest in. And one of the things that I've always liked the most are the games which come out of a suggestion from someone in chat. And what they are, they're not necessarily the specific game that was asked for. I'll offer an example about why I think that can sometimes be some dangerous ground. But they're not necessarily the game that was asked for, but they're in the ballpark. And those tend to be ones that delight me, but are also the ones where people are sort of like, how do you find these interesting games? It's been a while since I've heard that, obviously. But yeah, I think I've got a couple that are looking like that. So the danger about the playing the game that people want scenario, like sometimes people really do have a good recommendation and it's a great game, but I do find sometimes what can drive that is somebody really enjoying a game and also really enjoying a broadcaster, but instead of considering that broadcaster's interests, which obviously are going to be their own and not necessarily conveyed to the audience, what it is it's sort of like, I like these two things, and those two things that I like together are going to be awesome, right? Just like, I don't know, walnuts and bubble gum, two great tastes. This could be a disaster. So I remember for myself, there was a broadcaster I quite liked, and it's a 50-50 proposition here. So there were a lot of people who had recommended a game that I quite enjoyed called Dungeon of the Endless to him. And it seemed like, I don't think this was a completely unfair choice, because it was a roguelike-ish sort of game. And my assessment based on the games that he enjoyed actually would have been that he'd like that one, not necessarily the fact that I liked the game. But I actually remember it was a really negative experience when I finally got around to seeing him try this. And it was just because it was so very obvious that he was only playing it because so many people had bothered him. And my feeling was that he didn't really give the game a chance. Like, it was effectively, there's a lot of complaints about it being like too dark in terms of like the brightness and things like that. And I mean, again, I don't want to be too hard on him for what are obviously personal taste issues. It may be that the man genuinely thought the game was too dark, but the read I got on a lot of the complaints were not that they were so much complaints about the game, so much as, an effort to try and offer a justification for why the game wasn't being enjoyed. we do this also for things that we like, right? So if someone sits down and says to you, you know, why do you like Book of Hours, assuming that you do, there are a set of things that, like, I have a set of things that I think are probably true, probably reasons I like the game, but they're actually the product of thinking about it quite a bit, and particularly because I try to, you know, when I'm doing a stream, particularly a stream on Steam, or if I'm in a situation where I feel that I need to explain this game to people who've never played something like this before, you know, it's nice to have some material to go to. And I don't think, like, I'm definitely not being insincere when I say that these are features that I like about the game, but could I say that they are the reason why I like the game? I'm not so sure. You know, the fact of the matter is, a lot of things that we really like often sort of provoke some sort of feeling in us, and then there can be these justifications we make after the fact. So like I said, it's an effort to try. Obviously, I'm not going to say the broadcaster's name. If it's positive stuff, I like to say the name. If it's negative stuff, I tend not to like to say the name, unless it's like really bad, and then it's, you know, then I let my worst impulses get away with me. But yeah. Hey Jamie, how you doing? But in any case, the reason why I think something in the same ballpark, or the better way for me to put it would be something inspired by a recommendation rather than the recommendation itself, would be you get past that concern that you are playing something that you won't necessarily enjoy. So one example, I was obviously very grateful when somebody gifted a game. I don't even think it's around anymore. I think it was called H1Z1 or something like that. And it was like it's very much, you know, DayZ. There's a lot of different variations on this game, right? It's you know, something sort of Arma flavored or, you know, related. I think some of these eventually turned into battle royales or something like that. But yeah, basically, you know, it's a crafting survival style game in a world overrun by zombies. And it's obviously a very popular style of game, or at least was a very popular style of game, but it's really not for me. And I got the impression that this was gifted with an expectation that I would play it on stream. So I did give it a shot, but it really wasn't for me. And I do feel like, obviously I don't want people to feel like their money is wasted. If I had been given the option, I probably would have said thank you, but you know, this probably isn't a very good fit. But I didn't have the option. So those are the ones that I really want to avoid. But for the ones where, you know, I have an idea of what people are into, and when I find, usually what happens is I get a key offer, and it's something along those lines. Those are the ones that I think would really fit quite well. So a good example of something like this would be, you know, a lot of people would like to see me play Disco Elysium, and I did play a bit of Disco Elysium for my birthday. But let's say I never played Disco Elysium. And I did have an opportunity to play Alcat's Rogue Trader, something I would like to come back to. This is the sort of thing that hopefully might be a good alignment. Now, of course, the trick here is that it could be that people prefer the very unique features of Disco Elysium, particularly the not having any real combat to speak of, so far as I can tell. They may prefer that side of it, which means that Rogue Trader would actually be a very bad choice. But I also happen to know there's a number of people who really like Warhammer 40k in the community, so I've only played the Warhammer 40k video games. I've played a Warhammer Fantasy Battles game before, but I was Lizardmen. I like the Lizardmen. independent of the frog thing. I think I liked lizardmen before I really found out I really liked frogs. But anyways, I'm really getting off topic here. But that's sort of an example of the sort of nice alignment. Now, as it happens, I'm fascinated by Disco Elysium, and I'd really like to go further in that. So that's one where both people's interest and my interests align perfectly. But I've always tended to find that being able to do something that I think is consistent with the spirit of what people are interested in, while being able to choose something from the opportunities that come in, I do feel it's a selection thing, where because I've already identified that personal interest, and I feel like I've had a good read on what the people were interested in that particular game, I think that's really where that comes across. So an interesting example of this might be that the people who want to see the survival crafting stuff, giving The Long Dark a try might be a good example of that, because I am, aggressively Canadian at times. The only thing is that one thing that turned me off of The Long Dark for such a long time is I believe it's a game that basically doesn't have a win. You're essentially doing the survival crafting stuff to last as long as you can. And I've never quite... There are some survival crafting games that do it for me, and a lot of them don't. So, I don't know. We'll give it a shot. I happen to know the developer of this game really likes The Long Dark, though, so I should spend some more time in it. Anyway, I don't know how many of you wanted that preamble, but there's your 10-minute warm-up. I think we were going to start with a Salon before too long. Sorry, I'm just going to have another sip of coffee. Coffee at this hour, you ask? Indeed. I've got a lot to do. Okay. Now, if I recall correctly, I had some IOUs in terms of the various books I wanted to read. So, yes, okay, we're already... I think we're loaded up on... Oh, actually, you know what? We may not be loaded up on reading, because I noticed Collar's desk. Okay, so I'm not using my consider verb. Is that because... No, it's not because I have a... Okay, Fusine is currently occupied. And I saw a note here that says to start at the Ascendant. But I have my Hyksos and I have my consider verb, so let's just throw that in there now. Oops. So just a reminder as to why we're doing this. Oh, weird. I don't think it's normally lined up like this. Oh no, hang on, this is the consider verb, never mind. Yeah, so just a reminder, long stream tonight. Maybe not a long stream tonight, but definitely got other things to do. I'd like to do a long stream. I just don't think it's realistic for me to go longer than 3 hours. But yeah, just a reminder of what we're doing here is we're looking for mentions of Noon and Ys. And that's specifically so that I can pursue... let me just adjust my note here. Anyways, yeah, sorry. So I'm taking the time to find the Ys and Noon because I've narrowed down my choices of history to those two possibilities. But I haven't decided on which one yet. And in fact, both of them, I believe, are supported by both Newman. So I also need to... decide which of the two I'm picking. All right, rest and refreshment. Summer. It is summer. I am sitting on the bench outside the Sweet Bones, eating crumbly cheese and nettle wrappings and good black rye bread, soaking up the sun. Night has fallen, dawn will come soon. So, I'm faced with a little bit of a dilemma here in terms of whether or not it makes any sense for me to keep a memory overnight. I guess it doesn't really hurt, but like, what do I use that for? Not so clear. I don't know, maybe we won't, I don't think we should push that hard for it. I think we'll just enjoy the contents of the books. All right, Knock, a familiar passage, a manual for departure. The author, who identifies itself as the Jekadu, claims to be one of the great hooded princes of the land of the river. The style is informal, even chatty. No, these doors shouldn't be recorded, but if we had only recorded things before we'd had to leave the fifth history, we would be in a much better state. So here I am writing it down, and if you don't like it, you can sanction me. The manual for departure lists a number of strategies, occult, martial, and political, for quick escapes. Many are irrelevant, obsolete, or enigmatic, but the manual does include a number of powerful techniques for opening portals. Let's do this in order. The Gospel of Zacchaeus, an extremely heterodox account of the Nazarene Messiah and his works, describing his ascension to the mansus through the opening of his body. 7 were the wounds of his body, 7 the doors of the house, 7 the lesser aspects of the hours, and Knock the aspect above all, for the mother of ants is the mother of salvation. The book includes a description of a rite which can be used to raise a corpse to half-life, in memory of he who bled for the wood, but the marginalia claim that the mother of ants no longer permits use of this rite. Deaths and Their Evasions. Father Stanislav John Schaller writes of the means and limitation of passage between the orders of the mansus. No long names hours. Unusually, Father John has written this book in Fusine, for, he says, a special secrecy. He speaks very cautiously of the exceptions that can sometimes be made to the edicts of Chancel and Calyptra, and hints at the means by which he successfully returned a lantern long to flesh. Schaller mentions most cautiously of all that he has been permitted to see a book that speaks more deeply on the matter, but that it was surrendered into the shadow of a covenant stone of the Watchman's Tree. It can be retrieved if the 99th wink is reserved under the edict's liminal. The Wind's Ruin, the second volume of the Meditations of Abbot Thomas of the Abbey of the Black Dove. Abbot Thomas speaks of his time as a raider when his name was not Thomas but Toke, scything the sea, striving for plunder. Abbot Thomas clearly regrets his storm years, and much of the book is taken up with his thoughts on penitence, but there are hints that he also misses those years and the companionship of his sword brother, ship brother, Trygive. The Morphe Codex. A priestess of the Sisterhood of the Knot claims to have discerned the true meaning of the Thunderskin's birth. The writer credits the Red Grail, the Ring Yew, and the Horned Axe, the powers the Sisterhood reveres, with agreeing a final treaty between the hours of the house and the hours they displaced. The Thunderskin loved the Yew, and the Grail destroyed him, as restitution for the slaying of the Horned Axe's sisters and brothers. The Thunderskin entered the mansus through the Peacock Door, a privilege never given to the witch and sister, but then their merit was much less. The writer admits that entry through the Peacock Door is unseemly, but insists that under the circumstances there was no other way. The Intimations of Skin. Fiendishly complex, weirdly distorted illustrations of Congress and anatomy by the haunted visionary painter Niels Friedrich Malsker. Malsker illuminates the evolutions of the names of the Grail with unfortunate clarity. It seems that a lovely who consumes an ivory becomes an ivory, a lovely who consumes a thirstly becomes a thirstly, a lovely who consumes a name of another hour might take its place. And the penultimate illustration, a lovely grapples with a fungoid knot that can only be a name of the crowned growth. The lovely's mouth and other portals gape wide, and the growth name is already partially engulfed, but it seems that Malsker couldn't bring himself to illustrate the result, and the final illustration is only a scrawled, bloated obscurity. De Bellis Murorum, an 18th century epic poem by the pseudonymous Solipstos. The poem elliptically describes a war between beasts, weather phenomena, and arcane concepts. It's quite specific about their tactics. The two unjoined and the horn distinguished, consequently blood. Those indignities perpetrated by the deceitful fraternity of Obliviates. It's not clear whether CROD, who is identified only by his initials, was in fact an initiate of the Obliviate Order of Immortal Adepts. He wrote in the 16th century, after the order, if he is to be believed, had passed the height of its power. 58. That they did claim inheritance from the traditions of the House of Leith, but that they have disregarded both its most sacred and most beautiful ceremonies where they are not found convenient. 59. 71. The Glassfinger toxin is no mere assassin's convenience for the Oblividiots to confine to the disposal of their enemies. It has higher uses. Certainly it is a great matter of winter, but I have already outlined the technique by which it may be fitted for its ultimate destiny. The Ascendant. The edge-long Dardash boasts of her victories over her brother enemy Tareg in the days of the Shadowless Empire. Sweeter than wine, than nectar is the blood of my brother. We have raised up armies one against another. We have sated the Blackbone with the sinking of our ships. Dardash's boasting at length turns melancholy. An edgelong is half a dyad. She may not defeat her hated brother enemy without ending herself. She doesn't even want to, but she is aware to her frustration that she is a piece on the board, an axle on the ox cart, an essential part of the eternal engine of contention which the Lionsmith and Colonel use to sustain the world. Okay. So I guess the question is, because the sun has already fallen, do I want to try and do another batch of books? I think I'll just leave it for the next day, which means at this point, I think I'm willing to speed up the playthrough. We'll probably go back to a normal... yeah, I have no idea why I restored my whisk there, but... we'll probably go back to a normal speed when the new season comes, but I think this will be how I handle the future. Now I suppose there's the possibility I will do a salon today. So let's see who the guest is before I make any decisions. Numa! We are at the threshold of Numa, the Labyrinth season, the season that lasts only a single day. When Numa ends, all memories. Is there a way of saying it? Numa, the shortest season, Labyrinth season, when the year loses its way, when time is a river and memory a winged bird. In Numa, oddities ripen in the gardens of the Isle, unexpected visitors arrive, memory departs. When Numa ends, all memories will vanish with it, even persistent ones. 1 of every 9 seasons in Brandkrug is Numa, but Numa is the vagabond. Numa has no heralds. Numa might arrive twice in 1 year, or 4 years might pass without the touch of its mists. Now, if I was playing the base game, this would be the point that I would probably want to write a history and just finish the game. But we're not ready for that yet, so we're going to do some uncanny labors. The inn is crowded with Numa's heralds and pilgrims. They will be gone by morning. Until then, I could offer my services for payment. I might regret it. Now, if we take a look, so this would normally be a time where we try to break something up for more memories, but that also can't happen here. We've got, at least I'm fairly sure everything's committed. I suppose I can do a quick trick. I can do a quick check. As long as there's the hot pink icon. I remember sorting out what I wanted to get. Now, actually, this has some interesting implications too. Um, So I think I'm going to try and keep the avenue of inquiry overnight. I think the game has actually changed so that I'm not able to do anything with that. But yeah, so basically we're going to lose all of these at the end of the day. So the better option for me right now is to try and craft as many things as possible. Also, I want to try and make hay as far as the special collections are concerned. So I think first thing I'll do is grab some water. Drop water, mist coils below. I should also tend to the bees. I don't want to use the language for that. Let's do coil and chasm. I'm not so sure about the not so sure about the vegetables, but I guess I can give them a shot, but maybe for a second round. Okay, I don't feel like I need the sea hawk. I mean, we might do a test one, but what I want are the I want the Numa specific ones first. So let's get the only in Numa can I follow the white flowers of Moli to its potent black root. Do a second one of those. Nectar. I'm actually running out of options here, so we'll do one for the Numa pear. Where's my nectar? Yeah, you know what? I think I'm gonna give this sea holly a skip. So I have the health, but of course we've got lots. I'll just see what the vegetables say here. I don't think it's going to give me anything special, but... Do grapes taste different when plucked in Numa? Perhaps we only imagine it. I think the game's trying to tell me something here. Okay, I'm gonna do a couple of experiments here. This does limit me on the follow-up with the beehive. Yeah, I'm trying to think of reasonably effective ways to make the most of the season. So the other thing that I want to try and do, because we're going to be losing all of these, now would be a good time for me to try and make some of the special items. So even if so a good example of this is maybe I don't want to make an Uzalt, but I would want to make Xanthotic Essence if I can. So with that, what's my highest lantern? I guess it's the Didumos. It's a little surprising. Okay. This is also just one of those nice opportunities for me to actually see what can make xanthotic essence. I've been meaning to do this for a while, by the way, because of all the refulgin, but... Oh, does this not count? Ah, this counts as a material. My bad. Okay. Well, what I'll do here, I'll take the Ichor Vitreous. It's not so that I can make the... It's not so I can actually use it. But I do want to identify all of the candidates that can make xanthotic essence. Well, I can make ashertine too. Don't have the need for ashertine, of course, because that ink... The main purpose of that ink would be to... The main purpose of that ink would be to help me read things. Okay, so I've got what I need here. Now I just need to find an appropriate liquid to give up. That's not a liquid, that's a material. Eigengrau it is. Lighten this liquid to a golden essence of lantern power. And I won't give up the plus Faust, I'll give up one of the normal Faust here. And I'm basically going to do that for as many of these as I can. Not all of these will sort of justify this kind of work. I'll try and do it with the Ascendant Harmony too. Assuming I've got another lantern that will let that happen, but I'm pretty sure I do. But what's the liquid I'm giving up? True Blood of St. Januarius? That feels like a bit of a steep cost to get a fairly well, not routine, but not a... Let's say something that isn't essential. Scrumpy? I think the Witching Tisane's a little easier to get. Or give up more of the Eigengrau. Yeah, let's give up... Oh! That's what I get for not paying attention. Okay, let's find... Alright. That's not being agreeable. Well, so much for that. I could probably do something with the foundry. Nope. I'll confess, I thought I had a little more flexibility with this. Alright, well, I can always rely on the kitchen. Alright, I think I'm running out of options now as far as the lantern stuff goes. Another one that might have been nice would be the Ichor Vitreous, but I suppose I can work with that later. So, what are the other things that I want to do? Pyrus Orichalcinus. I'm trying to remember which one of these gushes forth the sacrament, as Thirza puts it. So I don't exactly want to be throwing health into that, but the Hive's Lament should take us through. Oh yeah, well, no, this is stupid. I have all my nectar stuff used up. What on earth was I thinking? Okay. I mean, I guess it's Nillikant or yeah, probably Nillikant's the best option here. Although actually the serpent milk's also a good choice. Anyways, let's try and do what we can. I gotta find something that'll take. This will actually be an interesting challenge. So I think probably we might be able to get away with the Hall of Voices for this. But now I need to find something that... Actually, I think the Inks of Containment help me in this case. Let's put an Arab at that. Alright, so there's Solomon's Preparation. Although a Lethe wouldn't go wrong in this case. We'd need a beverage, though, rather than... I'll go ahead with this one because I feel like I'll have other opportunities with the Lethe. Okay, Forbidden Epics. Perinculate is probably the one that I want here. So, although I think I usually use this hearth for the Perinculate. So I need a leaf, something that'll accept a leaf. Got flower and leaf. I'm thinking I don't have a lot of options as far as the flower goes. I mean, this has potential, but I'm trying to think how on earth I would try and turn this into some kind of Perinculate. Do I have the... Maybe. Nope. Oh, good lord, where did that go? Oh, back here. Alright, I'm really closing myself off to options. It's also partly because I have my common set of crafting stations and then I kind of ignore the altar. Oh, here we go. The Malachite altar. Well, the Malachite altar, like, it feels like an option, but I'm trying to think how I get one of these edge skills inside. I think that's a little too much. But what I will do is I'll go and double check these altars up here. This is easier in the old days where some of the flowers counted as fuel. Okay. There's definitely some options here. The Assite altar is the one that doesn't want to take flowers. But this one has potential. You're kidding me. Oh wait, right, because that's a leaf, not a flower. Okay. So I was a little reluctant to give up the cat's claw. Zarog, good to see you. How you doing tonight? Ah, alright, well, that's not going to do it. Oh, right, it was Cyclone Eclipse I think I was looking for. now may not be a bad time for me to look for other well, no, you know what? Let's just do a Cyclone Eclipse. All right, brew a notoriously deadly ink of power. I think I was going to use the old wound to make a lethe. That only needs a beverage. Should probably start with something that actually has moon. This is not a whole lot of surprises here. That's interesting. Ah, yes, okay. Okay, a lot of egg recipes. Lots of egg recipes. I have a suspicion a lot of my lethe recipes are currently being used to garden. Okay, Azamel's an option. I didn't think of that one. Yeah, so a lot of Azamel. Apparently none of these make lethe, which is weird. So I'm going to leave that aside. I could, of course, try another Princulate as well. Oh god, what do I want to do with Horizon Sight? Actually, here's a neat one for me to try. If we go to the Shrine to Saint Januarius. Now that doesn't work because it's a lantern and a moth. I actually don't think there's any lantern and moth ones, so I need maybe a moth and a rose somewhere. Nope. Spoke too soon. So if I take the Inks of Revelation... I've always wanted to try this. Oh god, I gotta find 4 more rows. Probably it'd be a Aglaophotis scented candle, but I think that might be 3. 2. Wow, okay. Where's my powerful rose? I'm just waiting to find the ridiculous food item that counts as a devotion. So neither of these counts as omens. Although this does. Unfortunately, this keeps me too short. How do I... Oh, the Noombroom. Oh, that's devastating. Huh. Oh, but then I guess I would need the it's not just enough to have the 15. I would need the relevant liquid. Right, 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 right. So that would be the Ichor Auroral, I think. Good God, that's tough. I guess that would take the place of the Occult Scrap, but... Huh, okay. I don't think any of the triple knot have rows. I'm really curious about this one now. Maybe this isn't... I might want to save this for another... Does the Ichor Auroral count as a pigment? I think it might. Yep. Okay. Might be onto something interesting here. Oh, we got Azumel. Not quite what I was expecting, but... Oh, lordy. All right. So, yeah, I somehow need to find 4 rows to go in here. I have 2 with the Occult Scrap. Two with the Fet, but... Oh, actually... Yeah, I mean, that doesn't do anything I couldn't do already. I'm gonna guess that the Stimfling doesn't have some ridiculous rows, but actually, one of these had rows. I could have sworn. I didn't get the turtle? Feels like an oversight. Okay. I'm trying to decide at what point I declared if... Oh yeah, that's only 2. Okay. I feel like there's a possibility I'm missing here, but I can't quite articulate it. I don't know. This was kind of more of a whim more than anything. So I should probably move on. Although I'm curious. I know I moved a whole bunch of stuff. It's like the honey haunted pie. Anyway, I think I'm gonna abandon this particular search. What kind of knock things do I want? I mean, I could try and make a Cronsicord, but maybe the Gervinite is slightly more interesting. I think Lockworks and Clockworks would be what I'm looking for. That needs glass. Fortunately, I've got plenty of that. Where did I store all my sand? While I have the opportunity, I'm maybe going to do a quick review of all of my knock options. I'll put the grape juice in place just for a little bit. Okay. Phoenix Liminal. Actually, I should probably take the Glassfinger Toxin instead of the grape juice. Just to maximize the... Oh, do I not have Glassfinger? So just in case I run into something that can make the Sacrament Acite. Actually, while I'm doing that, let's also take the Gervinite. Where did I put the Gervinite? Probably down here. Oh, maybe I used it. Shame for me if I did. Because now I can't... part of what I'm doing here is just a chance to see what the recipes... I haven't been as diligent in locking in the different recipes as I've been playing. So Numa's always a nice chance to log a few of those, but I've got a bunch of crap all around the house, but I'm clearly not... clearly not restoring some of the things that I need. And I know there's normally a Gervinite in here, but I think we've used that this playthrough. So, yep. I should have replaced that. I usually don't normally touch the stuff that's in... Oh no, here it is. Alright. Okay. So again, this isn't actually what I'm making with it. I'm going to go back to the sand. But just like I said, it's just a nice little chance for me to catch up on the... Oops. It's just a nice little chance for me to catch up on some of the recipes. Okay, do I have another knock that I can do this with? Will it take sand? Probably not. But this might. Maybe not. Again, I feel like there are some possibilities that I can work with, but not within the constraints that I currently have. Particularly because so many of these are now being used for other things. I'm going to double check, but I don't think I can make use of the sand in this. Nope. Okay. I mean, I don't have to... I also don't have to use all of these things. These are more nice to haves. I suppose one thing I'm interested in, though, I should find something with scale. Catacombs altar. Bone is the memory that does not die. So, let's find something with a hell of a lot of scale in it, and see what we can make. Is the feather the best I can do here? I'm not opposed to it, I just wonder if there's another... Maybe we'll put you here. Can put the earth sign in the devotion, I suppose. But I suppose that invites the question where the memory goes, so... Alright, with this, I guess... Essential Periost has the... I kind of feel like we're not giving... Yeah, so there's the old moment, which gives us the earthquake name, but there's not a lot that we can do. Like, we don't have the old moment, nor do I want to make it. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder... I mean, if it's all egg stuff, then I'm not as worried, but... Yeah, lots of eggs. Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting that, but I'll take it. Okay, there's our old moment. Yeah, slim pickings as far as the scale's concerned. What do I want to do here? So I can think about how I want to use this sky. I mean, the problem with the sky is that so much of it just winds up being another memory, which is what we're trying to kind of get rid of right now. I suppose if we do that, we add back into balance. Well, actually, okay, so that's looking for music. Oh no, music or omens. But I don't think any of these have sky. Yeah, that's the best. So the Ascendant Harmony I should have used for something else. Alright, well this is a start. Let's find anything with sky in it. Okay, so I should be looking for something with... Ooh, actually, if we're looking for something with light, we can do that at this desk. I don't think volume is a problem. So I generally, I mean, obviously every streamer is going to be, every streamer is going to have their own feelings on this, Jamie. I think probably audience participation on its own is not a negative thing. However, the one that's tough is telling people how to do things, so like backseating. And this is a difficulty, right? Because some people might see backseating as our audience participation, where it's actually, in a lot of cases, the one form of negative audience participation. And the large thing about that is the way you can sort of think about the difference is that with conversation, let's say, it's just a chance to sort of enjoy the game. Whereas backseating winds up taking away the opportunity to do more content, basically. It replaces the opportunity for a streamer to discover something interesting or to make a breakthrough, and instead it winds up it winds up taking it away. So a perfect example of this would be, I don't really doubt my ability to find the Porphyr. Like, I believe in the history of the inks. It says that you can create Porphyron using Inks of Revelation. And if I sit down and really work out what... if I sit down and really work out what the... the different angles I can take are, I can probably make it this Pneuma. The only thing is that it's actually not that important for me to make a Porphyrine. This is really just trying to see what I can throw some of the memories into. But in terms of just like talking about things in general, even if they're unrelated to the game, I've always sort of felt that those are just, it's nice to be able to talk about things, particularly if there's a bit of a drag in terms of the stream. And then if it's getting too off topic, then, at that point I just sort of redirect the attention to the task at hand. Okay, I think I'm willing to say at this point I've made the stuff that I want. That doesn't rule out other applications for these memories later. But the major ones I've got handled, and I want to get back to the books. So we were picking up at the Wainscot Histories. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. Oh, sorry, I also needed to do the Geminiad Volume 3. I should put that and erase that from my to-do list. I'm trying to think if there's something I want to do with the Tryst. I don't really think so, although maybe as a hedge I'll use the Fet. Didn't I just do Dabalis Murorum? I'm pretty sure I did, actually. I think this order is a little messed up. Anyways, observations on the Peacock Door is next. This one should use the Faust. I also have a feeling I did the Exorcist Field Manual, but again, I'll just clear out the shelf and we don't need to look at it again. Okay, as the sun his course. This one, I think I'll use the Arab. Or actually, no, we can use metal on this one. And then honey. A comprehensive guide. And that takes me out of the contradictions. And then we have two more left. One is Collar's Desk. I'll use the Faust in this case. And I guess I need to make a decision in terms of what shelf I want to start with. So let's start in the top left. So that means we're on to Foresight. So in the Mallory, and then War of the Roads. Okay, so I'm just going to take a minute here to remove a couple of notes that I made about the texts that I was looking at. I'm not going to do a or actually maybe I should do a start at just in case something happens. So start at BM. All right, and I don't know if I'm going to bother that much with making any more, doing any more creations. I just kind of wanted to tuck those away so I could make something of the memories. Hey, Bancroft! Lord Franklin Bancroft. Raquel Dilettante, infuriating prodigy. Possibly dead, possibly real. And we have a matter of the Sanctuary Draft. In Numa, visitors will be concerned with matters of comfort, delight, and loss. As long as this card remains, pneumatic visitors will have an interest in Grail mysteries. Their needs will usually be more exacting than visitors who come during more traditional seasons. Thorough weather for this time of year. Definite weather. Joy I shared with Lady Ava, the delights of our... Gone into the ocean, one last toast, the Prince of Wines and the... Not that Lord Bancroft has ever required inspiration, but will you... Okay, so we need 7 or more for Grail. This'll do. Count on a poet to Charlatan, our daughter. I'm actually tempted to speed things up. All right. The Wainscot History, subtitled Stories from Behind the Walls, a miscellany of non-traditional histories, including battles not generally acknowledged and countries which appear on no map, told in a playful, apparently fictional manner. Gore does not mention the Mantis directly, but constant coy metaphorical references to ascending the staircase of years, to the doors of sleep, and to the blue light of dawn suggest he had commerce with the unseen world. It was common in that time to speak of the division of the sun, by which contemporaries understood the eruption of barbarian forces and their uncouth gods. The Geminiad Volume 3, a fragile manuscript illuminated with twin shapes of sad and luminous beauty, and with all the phases of the moon. It might be as old as the 7th century, but the language Fusine is much older. Coral decorates its cover, and its page edges are sharp enough to slash a throat. These pages outline the nature and the doctrines of an hour that demands the union of what has been separated, an hour that is sought at the water's edge and beneath the moon, the witch and sister. The language is elusive, enigmatic, intricate. It'll take some untangling. The 3rd volume of the Geminiad reminds us that the witch and sister has been known to manifest as the sister and witch, and that this face may heal while the other face is always hungry. It implies connections between the witch and sister and the hours of the wood, especially the secret keeper called the Velvet, but it is ambiguous on whether the witch and sister is a wood hour proper, and it speaks at length about the sadness of the two who are one, the sadness that remains from their time as flesh. Tabellus Murorum, an 18th century epic poem by the pseudonymous Ellipstos. The poem elliptically describes a war between beasts, weather phenomena, and arcane concepts. It's quite specific about their tactics. The two unjoined and the horn distinguished, consequently blood. Observations on the Peacock Door. Naingala of Lagash discusses the Peacock Door, the highest door available to mortals in the Mansis, a rent, an imperfection, an abrasion. Notably, the book is written in Vac, which, by some accounts, is another aspect of the Peacock Door itself. Naingala addresses this by apologizing courteously to the door and the language at the end of every section. The Peacock Door did not exist, Naingala says, in the days when the gods from stone entered the Mansis. They used the fanged key to open the Savage Door, a door not usually available to mortals. Speech, as the initiates of Kion would have it, is a wound. I fear that through that wound the blood of the Mansis flows even now, and that one day speech will be an end to dream. I fear that, but I fear the alternative more. An Exorcist's Field Manual, a practic guide to the troublesome dead, grounded in theory, but with a clear focus on their disposal by the redoubtable Detective Austieri Wheellock of the Suppression Bureau. The dead usually avoid light as the most immediate manifestation of eternity, which has no place for death. However, those dead uplifted by gold, that is to say touched by an actinic theoplasma, happily bought about in daylight and are perhaps strongest at noon. If you are dead but uplifted by green, that's the Ring-Yu's blessing. The crown growth offers a similar but nastier benefit. This is how burgeoning risen come about, but there are different degrees of sentience and freedom depending on which growths are involved. The consciousness of one uplifted by green is always greatly altered, though. They never really seem like the same person. They may have dregs of their original souls, but these are often replaced by something else. The upshot, invariably, is that they need to be set firmly on fire. As the sun is coarse, Joel of the Bridge, retired soldier, sometimes tollkeeper, wrote this epic poem about Alexander's famously inexplicable decision at Issus to withdraw from the war with the Achaemenids and his subsequent return to Macedonia. Alexander meets at Issus with Darius, king of kings, for 3 days and 3 nights. On the first day, the two men trade threats, on the second, promises, on the third, secrets. Darius tells Alexander something so shattering that he retires to his tent to consider matters of strength and matters of mastery. At dawn on the 4th day, Alexander announces, "The sun has his course upon which he returns, and so do I." He returns to Macedonia, executing 2 of his captains when they dispute his decision. He brings with him the names of a blind god and a rite of sacred betrayal. For Joel opines, without betrayal there would be an end to war. Honey, the Comprehensive Guide. Harvey Haddington, pilot, polymath, confectioner, writes with great enthusiasm about the marvelous work of the bee. Haddington insists that all primary aspects, nectar, scale, heart, lantern, moth, grail, are possessed by bees and expressed in honey. Clearly, he points out that there are only 6 primary aspects, as a honeycomb has only 6 angles. Yugal ink is prepared with these techniques, but so is Skinshuck mead, and only Skinshuck requires honey. Just as any beverage or foodstuff can be improved with the addition of honey, so any garden is improved with the presence of bees, even those bloody Blomberendi. And in the Mallory, a lively account of the creation of each jewel at the world's beginning. Lively, yes, but almost entirely nonsense. Pearl, the tears of the forgotten moon, caught by the lionsmith in his net. Ruby, the blood of the first bird, stung by the lionsmith's hammer. The author is either terribly misinformed of the nature of the hours, or one begins to suspect intentionally throwing up a smokescreen to confuse seekers of the invisible arts. but there are some useful crumbs of fact to be picked out of the daft and gaping cracks. And the War of the Roads, 1451 to 1551. Willis Ford describes the War of the Roads, an event in a history other than our own, in detail, from its beginnings as a martial philosophical dispute between the dawn and sunset roads of alchemy, to a war which ravaged half of Europe. I actually wonder what would happen if I brought the guests in for Numa. I couldn't bring in Timothy, so I'm not going to try it, but maybe that's an experiment for me to try in future. It is not now widely believed that the sons and daughters of the Red Rose were forged into immortals. Understandably, they are, after all now all long dead. The forge itself devoured the greatest among them. The royalty of England, according to Willis Ford, became the sovereigns of the Leashed Flame, destroying or transforming their enemies, conquering Europe, establishing grand cathedrals to St. Spark. The alliance with the Forge begins to take its toll. At last, the Bronze King undergoes his great misfortune and great debasement, and is afterwards known as the Copper King. His attempt to cheat the Forge ends badly. The Leashed Flame is released, and the King's heirs are merely mortal sovereigns. All right, back to the readings. Obviously, at this point, the readings are the higher priority than any of the crafting. Okay, I know the Iron Book's going to want the Fusine. I don't think I did Vinzant's Minglings, though. But that's weird, though, because where did War of the Roads go? I have a feeling it might be in one of my reading slots. Ah, right. I think this was, yeah, I think the Ford, I was cheating the, actually, okay, that's kind of appropriate. I tried cheating the shelf. All right. There's got to be some, okay, I'll put this in here. If I move, I wonder if I move the T, if it will let me get away with putting the War of the Roads on the... No. You're kidding. That's plenty of room. I thought I had it. Okay, let's find... Well, you know what? We'll just put it up here. So it's not pretty, but it gets me, it lets me move on. Should probably put the Vinzant texts beside each other in the future. Okay, Nona's desk. I feel like the Carmine Petal should also be with its companion. Alright, so we've got the top shelf handled. What do I have the most of? Shaft. Alright, here's our silver spintria for our trouble. I'm wondering if now is the time for me to try and combine this stuff. Sacre bleu! I'll fix that later. Alright, lots of goodies. Aglaophotis, the other rose. Only in Numa does it bloom. Rosy color of good memories, but not the color of the rose. Only in Numa can I follow the white flowers of Moli to its present potent black root. Moli the gods call it, and it is hard for mortal men to dig, but with the gods all things are possible. Homer. Pyrus oricacinus. In Numa it develops quickly. The boughs of the tree bend with the fruit. A peculiar pear with coppery skin that barely dints under the pressure of fingers. Xanthotic Essence with Keeper-level Lantern. Xanthotic Essence is the precursor of the Great Ink Uzalt. Gervanite, an alloy equivalent in some respects to the Clockmaker's Invar, but instead of a constant weight, it retains the same origin in every history. Drop water. Water in the season of Numa is almost the same as water in any other season. I wonder if I can get away with putting that upstairs here. Nope. Alright, back to the bridge with it. Ordinary honey. In Numa, I might gather honey, beeswax, or something unexpected. Alright, carrots, tomatoes, marrows, and blessed onions, all the unsung heroes of the stew pot. In Numa, they flourish fast, but there's something odd about their taste. I should try and get a pumpkin in Numa just to see if that does anything. These are indeed just ordinary grapes. Another Xanthotic Essence. With Keeper level Edge, Perenculate is the precursor to Serpent Milk. Now, Serpent Milk's actually something that I may have use for later on in the playthrough. Oh, that is going to cause so much confusion. Solomon's preparation. So what I should do is I should leave the consider verb open so that I can try and draw out some food. Now, I do want to restore one of my health just so I can make the most of the Numa stuff. I'll do an Eigenbrow. Quick nap in a warm bed with something comforting to drink while the winds chase the clouds and the clouds chase the sun. So I'll take my health as well, and we'll head back to the beehive. That actually has nectar, so I don't want to do that, but let's do one of the lower level scale. Okay, the Journal of Walter de Wolf. Walter de Wolf, 3rd Baron Brankrug, was grandson of Thomas, son of the disgraced Giles, who eloped with Pale Hafren. The de Wolf line might have ended here if the Seneschal Ernestine, by then over 80, had not managed to reconcile Thomas with a dying Giles. Walter, though nominally siding with the parliamentarians, manages to stay out of the war, but in 1642 his son Brian runs away on the night of his 16th birthday and joins the royalist army. He is captured and returned to his father, who pleads for mercy and gives his parole for his son's good behavior. In 1648, Brian runs away again to join a royalist uprising. Walter writes of news that Brian has been seen on the field of battle at Gear Camp, but that his fate is yet unknown. Walter writes one last entry about his fear for his son and the future of his family. There the journal ends, but the extensive account of Walter's collaboration with the architect Gregory Wheelock includes usefully esoteric information. The Vincent inscriptions. Everett Vincent transcribed these from a cliff in Anatolia, where he famously survived a lightning strike. He died 7 years later to the day. His bones, the legend has it, were hot to the touch. Long ago, the Sisterhood of the Knot recounted the Forge loved the hour called the Sun in Splendor. The Red Grail long anticipated their union, and the Grail priestesses prophesied it. The remainder of the text consists of gloating remarks by the Grail priestesses of the shaping that will come, interpolated with warnings and laments from those of the Sisterhood who serve the Ringyu, and especially the Horned Axe. Nevertheless, an invocation to the Forge is included as part of an attempt to urge it onwards. Ava's Treasury. Ava de Wolf, last of the Brandkrugs, discusses the occult and aesthetic properties of jewels and other precious minerals. Black nephrite and scolecite for nowhere, orichalc and amber for Ys, amethyst for the night key of the spider door. So I feel like I should put a note on that. That is a terrible Y that I just wrote. The other thing that's interesting is the association, the amber, because of course that has implications in terms of the Watchmen and such as well. Anyways, Ava points out, bitterly, that there is no shortage of uplifting parables and proverbs about the saving graces of a flaw in a jewel, but that no one, not jeweler, not priest, not hour, has ever found a way to repair such a flaw. Vinzant's Minglings. The metallurgist and skysmith Everett Vinzant speaks of the sacred alloys, the alloys eternal, the alloys sufficient, the alloys intendant. Everett describes the voices and powers of mortals and immortals based on their composition by analogy to the sounds and strengths of bells based on the metals of their casting. Vinzant warns that the mingling of metals of too great a nobility can produce the alloys incestuous. He suggests very cautiously that the means used by the sovereigns of the Leashed Flame to produce their heirs may have analogous issues, for though the crime of the sky might be circumvented, yet the law remaineth the law in letter as in spirit. Or rather, in spirit as in letter. The Amalgam of the Red Rose, an account by Mistress Redflower of the alchemical operations favored by the House of Lancaster, also identified with the Sunset Road. These operations ultimately led to their victory in the War of the Roads, but are described as now debased. The generals of the houses of Lancaster and York are described as brother enemies, a term more usually associated with the dyadic invariably twinned Edgelong. The author's conclusion is that, in the absence of the operations of the Dawn Road, the operations of Sunset inevitably became unbalanced, debased, and ultimately enfeebled. The combination of the two is described tantalizingly as the Forge's true alloy. The Iron Book, a manual of the Ordo Lamea, an order of quasi-immortals who maintained a secret enclave at the source of the river Limia in the Roman province of Hispania Gallicaea. This manual was compiled by one Milari Yivni, who claims to have traveled to join the Ordo from the crossroads of the waters. Members of the Ordo took an oath, the iron chain that required them to remain hidden from the world. This manual includes presumably long obsolete addresses and passphrases that could be used to find the Ordo's contact in the town of Iria. The final part of the manual describes the punishments for Ordo members who break their oath of secrecy. This includes an invocation used to summon the spirit called King Crucible as an agent of vengeance. Yivni cautions that this must be used as a last resort when the oathbreaker would otherwise go unpunished. Summoning King Crucible might draw the personal attention of the Forge of Days. A marginal note suggests in any case that King Crucible, in the most transcendent sulk of sulks, no longer leaves the mansis. I feel like I should do the other Carmine Petal first. The Carmine Petal Revised, an apparently theoretical project proposed by Lionel of the Society of the Noble Endeavor, which might permit the imprisonment of a renegade forge name, a very heavily revised edition of an earlier and even more controversial work. The book was evidently revised sometime after the Wars of the Roads had ended, but even then, this kind of discussion would have been politically difficult. Lionel suggests that the disciplines of Scar and Hammer together would be necessary to create such a prison, but that either on its own would serve to release its occupant. and the Carmine Petal Unexpurgated, a project proposed by Lionel of the Society of the Noble Endeavor, by which he claims he succeeded in creating a sanctuary for a fugitive forge name, the Unexpurgated version. At the time this book was written, a fugitive forge name would have been guilty of heresy, treason, or both. Lionel suggests that the House of Iron and Fire, so created, would include hollows of air and night, which would serve as a final hiding place if the larger sanctuary were uncovered, though he says they could easily be revealed with invocations of the disciplines of either Scar or of Hammer. And finally, The High Traditions of the Noble Endeavor, a blandly positive work on the Endeavor Club, published by the Endeavor Club. The club was founded in 1862, but claims to draw from much older traditions. Club members are assigned names out of noble myth: Joffrey, Roland, and unexpectedly Breadbettel. They claim to be heirs of the Leashed Flame, which gave the island of Britain such appalling power in some histories. Their endeavor itself is a purifying fire, which makes its fuel something more than human. This transformation, however, is no longer encouraged by the club, and perhaps, the work is coy on this, no longer permitted. Alright, back to our readings. So we've got the first shelf of Foresight dealt with. Although for some reason there seems to be a big gap in the lower shelf now? I mean, I won't question it. It feels a little weird. Let's do the big Arab in this one. So I think now that I've got a couple of concepts that are related to Ys, I will probably... I'll probably be willing to cast the net a bit wider when it comes to books that I think are related, and then I would like to investigate the Amber and maybe make the Orichalcum at some point. Let's give you the Tryst. For some reason I thought this would be a Shapt one, but I'm happy it's not. Oh, I might be out of option. No, we've got Lantern we can use here, but I'm definitely running out of Elements of the Soul. Okay, so that's the Foresight dealt with. Now, this actually works out rather well because I did want to test whether or not I could get a fancy pumpkin by drawing out from the sack of vegetables during Numa. This is, of course, also the vegetables that we took out in Numa. Identify as a pumpkin. This is a pumpkin. Marvelous. So that's 5 seconds. We'll let it run for the full duration just so I don't have to... Nope, that's a good old-fashioned pumpkin. Mash it, eat it, hide forbidden documents in it. Okay. So I'm still looking for ways to get the honey, the pumpkin with the honey in it. The manner in which the alchemist was spared. In 1782, Émile Verdier used this text as the basis for a presentation to the Academy of Sciences in Paris. He was executed in secret the following morning without trial. In the days of the Carapace Cross, when humanity lived in the dark and ate on its knees, humans could enter the Mansis like vermin. One learnt the arts of flint, the arts of shaping and remaking. Through the black, the yellow, the red, the unwise mortal ascended to the shadow of the Aegon hatching and remained in his service. He may be there to this day. I'm always really intrigued by the mention of the yellow here. I haven't quite been able to decode it, but I do think it points to a change. The sky, the soul, the grand labor of Cal, an ascetic poet writing in the court of the shadowless kings. Cal's verses are brief, obscure, and often dominated by images of violence. A star is a pinprick, but the sun is a wound. It's always possible to be deader, Cal states. The watchman goes before, none but 7 may go after. Yet surely we are born to the glory as the sparks fly upward. Opus Magnum Caeruleum. Ambrose Westcott used to render the title of this venerable and anonymous work mockingly as The Big Blue Business. A kinder translation would be The Great Work in Azure. The reasons for Westcott's enmity to this work are clear to any pyroglyphicist. It was written at least 2 centuries before he was born, but anticipates or undermines many of his preferred conclusions. The work in question is the creation of the blue gold allegedly necessary for the terrible rite which allows a forge long to become a name. The book mentions that pyroglyphics techniques can be used with forge to create iotic essence as a necessary component, but withholds the final step, insisting that the consequences are too dire and that any interest should remain only a matter of theory. Enam Kapingling Lupir, Garki, and Crippus, in which 4 enigmatic figures tell stories they've heard over the years at the Roost, the secret location where the Aviform Hours congregate. Enam, has not the beach crow shared his treasures? Garki, not the rarest. He takes those things most precious, which he claims found, not stolen. The beach crow, Kapinglingpur, Lupir, suggests is not only a thief, but also a spy and even a voyeur. He has hidden the memory of secret couplings among the hours and their names in the corners of the house as treasures to gloat over. There is particularly fevered speculation on a liaison between the Ringyu, that fervent hour of the wood, and the mare in the tree, who sometimes has been the witch's sister. De Oris, Book 2. In Latin, a 19th century reprint by the indefatigable Nathaniel Darcy Evers of a 4th century Latin translation of a 4th century work. This volume deals mostly with the hour called Lionsmith, the hour called the Tribune of Scars, and with their enmity. The Lionsmith makes monsters to defeat the Tribune, but the scars of the Tribune are each a weapon. A Descent of the Shell, a treatise on eggs, light, and optics by Abbess Melissenth, dazzlingly illuminated with renderings of the abbess's visions. The book is unexpectedly challenging to read. The bright glitter of the gold leaf illuminations acquires a migrainous quality. The eye aches and tires. This is most likely a certain vivid book that Melissenth once sent to Gunhild, daughter of King Harold, which provoked in her a dream of eyes, but also caused her to begin to lose her sight, until she was healed by the Saint Bishop Wulfstan. To complete it is a kind of test. Its double thesis, at least, seems to be that the sun is either an eye or an egg, and so the second dawn will be either its opening or its hatching. The Chandler's Wish, formula and instructions invoking Moth, Lantern, and exceptionally, paradoxically, the liminal and theoretical hour called the Chandler. The author is anonymous, admitting only that they are one who is not yet nameless. The author makes a passionate argument that the hour named Chandler is in fact the oldest, even though he does not exist, because he is supposedly the culminating event of a plan that precedes even Grail and Moth. Where the Chandler has passed, the understanding of the Colonel and the Lionsmith will wrench open truth. Where the Chandler will pass, Moth will pass before him. And the Bancroft Diaries, Lord Franklin Bancroft was initiated into the arts of the flower maker by the rose witch Fiona Ayrshire. He rose to become a society provider of occult services and secret pleasures before his abrupt disappearance in 1790. Bancroft seems to have been a talented adept, but devoted his energies to frustratingly whimsical projects, arranging grape-fetching races between Mansa spirits, teaching percussagants to juggle, and conjuring storms of imaginary blossoms for the rose witch Ayrshire, who resolutely refused ever to couple with him. Bancroft spends 20 pages bemoaning this last. The mantra here recorded is a high and exacting magic which can be used to pledge one's spirit to the watchman, beginning an ascent to the house. Bancroft boasts of his ability to recite it when in his cups. He also had it set to music for a performance with fireworks at Vauxhall Gardens. Okay, I am feeling the consequences of so much reading in one go, so I know that we are going to be moving on to the patterns. Oh, I should put the teacup back before we ruin the books. Ooh, precarious. So I'm going to take a small break just to get some tea. When we come back, I'm looking to get through Numa. I think we'll have 2 more rounds of books, although I don't think I have the elements of the soul to sustain that. But we'll do as much as we can with the patterns, then we'll move on to salt and sort of everything we find here. There'll obviously be a little bit of an interruption in terms of the types of memories that I'm getting because I'll be reading these scrolls. But the point isn't that we're going by the category. It's more that we're just doing it in sort of an orderly fashion to just to make sure that we're reading all of the books and sort of getting some of the evidence for what we need. A funny thing too, at work, I don't know if this is a reputation I have or if this is just sort of the way that I've done things, but I remember I was collaborating with someone and they wanted to know the references that I was using, and I sort of like dumped like 190 different documents in their lap, figuratively, of course. But this is actually one of the things that I do. I feel like is the only way to do it right? If you're going to be referencing a literature, you want to try and go through it as comprehensively as possible. So this is actually one of the ways that I approach things that I don't know, is to just read a whole lot about it. Probably not as necessary in a game like this, which is intended to be enjoyed, but I do find that there's actually some enjoyment and some benefits to looking at certain books with a particular goal in mind, because even if it's not related to your specific topic of interest, I do tend to find that it does promote a little bit of, I don't know, it promotes a different way of thinking about these things, and so you can sometimes find a couple of pieces that maybe you weren't expecting. So anyways, I like doing it, but I'm gonna need a minute to get a drink, so I will leave you all, I don't know, leave you all with some advertising, some nice music. If you've been watching since the start, or maybe you've just gotten here, now would be a good time to get up, get a glass of water, maybe get a glass of tea yourself. I don't know what your favorites are, but I'll be back. I'll be back as soon as I can for some more Book of Hours. All right, thank you everybody for your patience. One of the things, so I snuck a little bit of a listen to some music uh, as I was making the tea, and this is gonna I'll do a totally unrelated to the game, but just a for me at least fun little bit of I don't know, just some background. So I've always kind of liked the sound of synthesizers, and I can't even really remember where. So like I've always liked electronic music, and this can be like everything from dance to more experimental stuff. So for instance, I like Aphex Twin and Square Pusher and that sort of stuff, but also very traditional sort of dance music. Um, but I also like really enjoyed the movie A Clockwork Orange, which has Wendy Carlos's really famous soundtrack for that. I later found out about Switched on Bach, but definitely the synths for A Clockwork Orange were my first exposure to that. And as a result, what was also kind of funny was I would sometimes see these ads on TV or whatever. It'd usually be like if I was in like a waiting room of some kind, or like just if there was like a TV on. I also tended to find that be exposed to a lot of this stuff. I would be at nursing homes because I was in a brass band that sort of went out at like Christmas times and things like that. So a lot of I'm exposed to probably more infomercials than I think I would normally be exposed to at in some environments. But I found that there'd be these like oldies music sets being sold, and I'd sometimes hear some 80s music, and of course, because I like the sound of synths, I'm like, oh, okay, actually this sounds pretty good. And not to imply that I never had heard some 80s stuff. So for instance, the Blade Runner soundtrack uses I used to play the trumpet and then the cornet in terms of the brass band. I also played piano. I'm actually trying to get back into piano, but I'm very rusty on that. So I did buy a keyboard though, like a one with properly weighted keys, so that it can feel like a proper piano. I also have a piano at work, which I'm delighted by. I'm a little shy to play it because it's in like the public area, but I kind of like to get to that point where I can play it again, or well, play that specific one there. But yeah, so like the Blade Runner soundtrack with Vangelis's very, very famous use of a synthesizer, and I love the synthesizer, but like I have sort of an emulated version of it. Yamaha made like a digitized version, which is very small. I think they call it. Hang on, is it CS80? Anyways, I think the synthesizer was called the CS80, but I think there's a special version that Yamaha. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so the original synth CS80, but they did a reissue of it. Oh, the Reface CS is what they called it, right? So again, it's a super small thing, and it's a digital. It's like it's a little digitized version of it. But, sometimes it's nice to have like a physical object rather than the other one. And the thing that's kind of interesting about the CS80 is that there's this sort of legendary and like impossible to find sort of super synth. I think it had like 3 keyboards called the GX1. I think Hans Zimmer used to have one at some point. And like Yamaha threw everything at that. And then there's this smaller quote unquote version that became the CS80. And again, that's basically, if you like Blade Runner, it's the sound of Blade Runner. Or Chariots of Fire is another famous soundtrack that used that. I mean, it's actually, I think there's a lot of things that have used, I think probably the original Doctor Who theme may have used it. Or maybe, sorry, not the original. But I think there was a version of the Doctor Who theme that used the CS80. But anyways, again, like I like I like the sound of synthesizers, and I like them enough to have preferences on particular synths. So of course there's there's a certain point at once you get exposed to 80s music, you're like, oh man, how long has this been hanging around? And actually, the Americans was really good for that. So the first time I ever heard the group Yaz was through the Americans. But then, I also find it about Depeche Mode, who's still releasing music, right? I'm sure I could have been exposed to it at some point. And Kraftwerk and such. And then sometimes I think I originally found out about Kraftwerk because Rammstein did a cover of the Model. But where this is all going, this is as a very brief or very tenuous connection to Book of Hours, but the thing that's true, like, I also do kind of like gothy music, and so there's lots of fun and synthy sorts of things that you can find if you go down that path as well. But I do tend to find, right, where if you listen to a certain type, and particularly of sort of that era of music, a lot of it is kind of very cold and mechanical, and I like that stuff quite a bit. But thanks to the Apple Music, I think it was called the Essential Album or something like that. I don't know how many of you have heard of this, but this is where the Weather Factory angle comes in. Weather Factory have been rather public about their love of Japan and Japanese culture. And I think it was actually because there had been mention of that recently, I think on one of the blogs or something like that. And on the Essential Album, they brought my attention, and again, I don't know if this is a really popular band and I'm only just finding out about it myself. It's called Yellow Magic Orchestra. And there's an album that they did in 1979 called Solid State Survivor. And it's really charming because it takes the idea of sort of synths and that stuff that was like new at that time, but it seems like and I read about this later, this seems to actually have been a conscious effort on their part, but they wanted to make something like really happy and uplifting. I think this is one of the things that I probably don't communicate enough about myself, is that I actually kind of like to laugh and joke and smile and things like that. It's a really upbeat, really pleasant little album. Anyways, so after I listened to that, I thought it's like, let's put up a playlist and hear all the other things other than that album. So that's how I spent my tea break. I have no idea if that's useful to anybody else, but I am now discovering music that a lot of people take for granted, let's say. What can I say? There's a lot of music. Actually, maybe the other thing to remember is that I spent the majority of like high school and middle school almost exclusively listening to classical because I really like it. I still really like it. But it does mean that there's a whole lot of very, very good music that I'm completely unaware of, just by virtue of my weird little path through what I was interested in listening to. Okay, so we are on to the pattern shelves. Again, I'm expecting that we'll run out of Elements of the Soul before time in the day, but let's go as far as we can with this. Actually, the other thing I could say too is that this might explain, I don't know how many of you remember this, but I was actually really interested and really delighted that they added music into the game, like in the sense of it being a memory. So the addition of Sky and the fact that it was associated with music was something I liked, just because, I don't know, it's one of these things, particularly if you think about Pythagoras and, of course, the huge influence that he had on occult thinking. Damn it! I didn't want the Eye of Lament. We'll take another crack at it with the health. I don't think I'm going to try and restore another health, though. But yeah, I was really delighted and interested in the presence of music, just because there's a few different ways. So, you know, Plato leads to Plotinus, leads to Neoplatonism and its influence on occult thinking. Pythagoras himself, either through the Neo-Pythagoreans or even his own writing. I mean, for crying out loud, the guy had a secret society of his own. Obviously, these are things that do influence some of the source material, and so there is a reasonable connection to be made with this. But also, it's just, you know, another part of life. It's another thing that I think is a worthy subject for a game like this. So the musical background is also something that probably gives me an angle that enhances my enjoyment of the game. Okay, advice on containment. Thyrza Blake discusses ways to keep wood things out of trouble and Mantis things in it. Thyrza is irritatingly light on specifics, insisting above all that the duties of an adept are the duties of a host, and that a conjured spirit should be kept in as luxurious a vessel as possible. Thyrza notes the similarities between the lantern-long habit of scrying, returning to the physical world despite their absence of a body by entering a mirror or light, and Pomander's techniques for confining Mantis long to mirrors. She wonders whether Pomander himself might be lured to visit Hush House if provided with a sufficiently alluring scrying. The Raptures of Forculus, the first volume of Abbot Geoffrey's hypothetical theological debates in the Socratic mode. If Janus were an hour, Forculus might be counted among his names, but that door remains closed, so Forculus is not. Geoffrey discusses the signs that mark doors, which might permit or forbid access to certain thoughts and dreams, speculating, carefully, on which of the sanctioned hours might teach or govern each sign. Traveling at Night, Volume 3, the annotated dream journals of Christopher Olopoli, sometimes called the only readable occultist, literate, entertaining, bewildering. Olopoli's disquisitions on fire and the unburnt god are interrupted by passages of distractingly erotic poetry addressed to Baldemera. To reach the stag door, I believe that all you really need is to want something enough, but I've never wanted anything that much, except, of course, Baldemera, and I'm very much afraid that the knot in the story is this. What Baldemera wants is the stag door. But here's something I learned in Persia. Perhaps it'll teach you what you want. On the Winding Stair, Gregory Wheelock, the master mason and architect employed by Walter de Wolfe to construct the Winding Stair and the guest chambers in the Hush House, describes a more ambitious and dangerous project. Gregory marks the bricks of his roost-touched family home, Treowyn, with Ramsund, hoping to open forbidden doors. Gregory evidently succeeds in opening a way to something he calls the Moon Hall, but here his account becomes erratic. He insists that in the Moon Hall, the horned axe is still an edge power. He hopes for an eternal rival, but cannot find the one he needs. The narrative is increasingly interspersed with chess notations and ends abruptly. The time of division, in which Amira Zara prophesies the events later known as the Intercalate, when the hour called the Sun and Splendor will be divided. The sun will be divided that it may not sire children. Still, its children shall be 4 in number, and its children shall be 7 in number, and its children shall also be numberless. The numberless shall open the way for the 7, and the 7 shall consume the 4. Myra prophesies 4 great wars before the second dawn, when the sun in splendor shall rise again. She cautions sunrise is blood, and I foretell now that the sun shall rise from blood, yet not the color of the blood, nor the hour of night. She includes a rite she speculates will be necessary for the second dawn. Actually, I just want to see something about that. Against Vitruvius, a 14th century treatise on esoteric mechanics and parahydraulics by Abbot Ranulf, best known as a Mason architect. Ranulf describes how he tested some of these techniques in the construction of the Winter Tower, now called the Long Tower. He admits to unexpected consequences. Ranulf mentions that the tower of Ely Cathedral collapsed around the time the Winter Tower was completed, although he stops short of suggesting that the one was the cause of another. A tower falls, a tower rises is all that he'll commit to. And Cartia's Delights, the 3rd volume of Abbot Geoffrey's hypothetical theological dialogues in the Socratic mode. If Janus were an hour, Cartia might be counted among his names, but the world has never turned in such a manner, and so she is not. Geoffrey discusses the living signs, signs which change their shape and whose flexibility is part of what makes it identifiable. He gives as one example the paradox of the hinge and draws comparisons with the names called twins, who would be considered hours beyond the church. He hints at the amethyst vessel, which can be sanctified by the great signs and presence of Nock. Alright, so this order is all messed up, but I believe we are on to the Twin Serpent Tantra for the next period. I'm going to take a minute to just make a note of that. Ah! Sorry, I almost dropped my pen, like, nib down. That would be bad. Okay. So we'll blast through it. Again, I don't think I'm going to try and keep any of the memories except the Avenue of Inquiry. Hey, we got the cuckoo honey. That makes me happy. The Blumberendi were rogues and trickster heroes among the Carapace kinds, ingenious, brave, prolific, untrustworthy. In Numa, their children might yet bring their gifts to ordinary hives. I'm actually going to try and get kind of clever with the preservation. So I want to be careful on the timing here. So now, if I put the Avenue Inquiry in here, I'm going to have 30 seconds. So that may have been unnecessary. Aha. Yeah, okay. So all of these are still here. Yep. That's what I was trying to avoid. I've got you, Kennedy. Alright, on to autumn. Current affairs, what's happening in the world beyond Brandkrug? What visitors will the season bring? We're on the affair of the particular mystique. The Suppression Bureau has a growing interest in the recent fad for unconventional, often prophetic religious movements. No laws have been broken, nothing sinister has come to light. All these movements are comfortingly solar in nature, but there does seem to be something going on. Afterwards, I don't remember what work I performed, except in Sense and Sensations. Leaf mold, a rhythmic musical clicking like melodious castanets, soft blue flame like antique gaslight, and cold. I remember that where we went, it was cold. Alright, let's restore our collection. So, yeah, we'll do that. Actually, I think that'll work for me. Let's do, I'm trying to think. So I've got more than enough whist. So I'm going to make some money at the Sweet Bones. We won't bother bringing Mr. Kill in just because we don't really have any memories that we need. I am going to wait the minute to see who's visiting, just to see if I can host the salon or not. I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. This will complete once dawn has come. I really shouldn't be drinking tea at this hour, but man, it's good. So yeah, I know it's a little dull for this opening minute here, but once we see who the visitor is, we'll decide whether or not we can move ahead with the invitations. Aha! We were going to invite him. Okay. So, no need to, there's not a, this isn't a disaster. Like, it just means that I'll do the salon a day later and we'll focus on reading books instead. And I'll speed up after we get everything queued up. Hold back on that. There we go. Can't remember if there's another. I think the Songs of the Carapace. No, that's Fucine. Interesting. Oh, but the Road to Janus. Okay. So I'm going to add the Road to Janus on my IOU. Again, just by way of clarification, I'm specifically looking for references to Noon and Ys, although Ys I'm now going to expand to references to Orichalcum and Amber. And next round, that'll be the last of the... that'll be the last of the patterns. I'm going to start on the salt, though. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Fraser Strathcoyne, philanthropist, collector, former librarian. A complicated man, but not a cruel one. Librarian, I have urgent business with you. Perhaps you know something of the Obliviates, Librarian, an order of Long who have forsworn traffic with the Hours. The Obliviates long ago retreated to Port Noon across the Western Sea. Okay, so that's one, basically any reference to the Obliviates. The Obliviates long ago retreated to Port Noon across the Western Sea, but I hear some of these new cults swearing an ivory oath, very like the ivory chain of the Obliviates. I'd like to look into other similarities. Illumination, Mansus references solar doctrines. Alright, so ideally it's a 4-lantern book that I give him, but I don't want to spend all day looking at... No, Illumalary does the trick. I can't believe this is a coincidence. The Obliviates are back in the world, and the Obliviates never come back to the world. Something is afoot in Port Noon. Interesting. I want to sync the Sweet Bones and the books back. Okay, let's see how it all went. The Twin Serpent Tantra. Just before the outbreak of the Great War, Alexander Sparrow, almost certainly a pseudonym, published leaflets claiming the influence of snake princes on world affairs. The text called the Twin Serpent Tantra was his primary inspiration. The Tantra describes the Great Hooded Princes, a dynasty of unclear origin, engaging in prayers, sacrifices, and poetry in honor of the Key Serpent, the Crossroads Twins, and the Mirror Queen. Nagai encircles, Nagai arises from wounds, Nagai spares those who are already harmed. The Great Hooded Princes are described as having escaped from the history of their death to a history where they yet live. The text claims that there are now 108 of them, but, in one of many instances of twinnedness, before they crossed from their death chronicle, there were only 54. By their marks ye shall know them. A monster-hunting initiate of the hour named the Colonel, who identifies herself as Little Sophia, provides advice on finding the weak spots of Long. Little Sophia observes dryly, should one desire to slay an immortal, it is most practical to do so before they become immortal entirely. She details the marks, the changes that Long undergo as they abandon their mortal condition. As the lantern Long begins to abandon its flesh, its skin becomes loose, its bones soften. The sixth mark is to be observed thus, when the flesh between the finger and the thumb can be pulled to the final finger joint. Just Verse, a rare surviving copy of Christopher Allopoly's notoriously unsuccessful volume of experimental poetry published in 1912. Allopoly is clearly more interested in the occult than aesthetic aspects of the work. By most measures, the rhymes are contrived, the meter inconsistent, the imagery banal. Still, even the worst verses have a compelling quality, and I find myself drumming my fingers on the desk to accompany their rhythms. In an afterword, Allopoly discusses mnemonic holometaboly, by which he seems to mean a sort of crafting process where memories, when fed into a preliminary meter technique in the presence of enough knock or rose, can blossom and fissure into more potent versions of themselves. The Radical Measure, a manifesto for experimental and dangerous-sounding invocatory poetry written sometime in the 19th century by Dr. Aaron Peel, a notoriously inconsistent and incoherent text, apparently produced in a tearing hurry. The hours have little time for poetry, Dr. Peel avers, but they have a tremendous amount of time for poets. As the rose opens, Dr. Peel explains, an enduring memory opens to the horizon. This is a way of saying something that cannot otherwise be said, and is best only written with one's eyes firmly closed. The Radical Measure glossed. The original Radical Measures was a manifesto for experimental poetry with occult properties written in the 19th century by Dr. Aaron Peel. The original is notoriously incoherent. Much later, Christopher Allopoly took on the task of editing and glossing it. He has taken some liberties, but the updated version is generally well regarded. The hours have little time for poetry, Dr. Peel avers, but they have a tremendous amount of time for poets. Allopoly has added a note suggesting that this should in fact be the most tremendous time with poets. As the rose opens, Dr. Peel explains, enduring memory opens to the horizon. This is a way of saying something that cannot otherwise be said and is best only written with one's eyes firmly closed. Allopoly's gloss reads, Horizon Sight Synthesis Method, reverse procedure with knock to elaborate Gervinite in the chronsochord mode. On imperfections, Pomander, Lightsmith, and Lanternlong describes the process of transinhabitation, which he calls a manifestation of imperfection. Lantern Long lack bodies and so cannot normally leave the Mansis, but they can steady glint in the physical world by establishing a road of glass. Pomander notes with disgust that the Order of Long called the Obliviates refer to it as scrying, which he considers a debased term. Pomander explains the benefits of transinhabitation, that a Lantern Long can affect the senses and thoughts of those nearby, that they can even enter their spirits, and that they can employ the senses of those inhabited to experience again the scent of blossom and season. This seems to be what interests him the most. He insists that a Lantern Long should only ever inhabit a mirror of silver, not silvered glass, but he declines to explain why. Messenger awaiting her destination. The Libyan Burzgash records his prophecies of a city unbuilt and entreaties to its herald. This is one I should be paying attention to. The herald may never arrive at the city unbuilt. The city may never be built without the herald's message. The herald is finally identified as the 12th initiate of the House of Silence. The foundation stone will be taken from the House of Silence, Burzgash suggests, to become the foundation stone of the city unbuilt. Now, I don't think it mentions it here. Inscribed stone, a stone tablet with rows of badly worn scratches that once probably were writing. The Larkabine Codex. Christopher Larkabus claims to have purchased 2 handwritten copies of this codex from a family of witches on the shores of the Sea of Marmara. A third was given to the sea. The sister and witch came from the west, where they were born in 2 wombs, one a princess, one a monster. Nevertheless, they loved each other from birth and met in secret to seek union. When the great drought came, the kings of that land tried to sacrifice the princess and the witch, so they sailed across the sea. When despair took them, they flung themselves into the drowning waters, and so found the Painted River, where they entered the Mansis through the offices of the Red Grail. Nevertheless, the Codex ends with the condemnation of the Grail. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is fix the IOU, so that would be the road to Janus. Oops. More initiates of the House of Silence, so it's not a bad one to... Yeah, it looks like they all wind up reversed. Anyways. Definitely a nice one to follow up on. Oh, I forgot. The Songs of the Carapace Cross. Micah Z, sometimes called the Magus of Courts, etched this work in acid on stone. It has been reproduced many times in many languages since, but the reproductions are often lost to landslides. So he describes the rites of the gods who were stone, the first hours as practiced before the existence of human civilization by the Carapace Cross. He claims a final survivor of the cross shared the information with him. The rites are largely obsolete now. Few have been observed in the last 1,000 years at least to have any effect at all. Nevertheless, Z identifies at least one invocation of particular power. He warns that it should be used with caution, lest the gods who were stone find their way back from nowhere. Okay, back to work. So again, we're focusing on the salt texts for now, and then moving into the rest of the library. As much as I can, I'm going to try and go left to right, but I know I have a couple of weird placements that will be will be a bit of a wrinkle. It's not really that big of a deal as long as I'm consistent in the application. Okay, so we already know the Voyages of Furnish and Ivoriel has a mention of noon, but I'm still going to read it just for the... if you've seen... One big reason for wanting to reread some of the text like this, as I mentioned, even if it's one that I know has a reference to noon, let's say, there's still value in rereading simply because as I get more information, if I, for instance, wind up seeing references to amber, although of course amber in this case would be a Ys reference, these are the sorts of things that I kind of want to be on top of where I can. Let's do the Leonine Tantra. And then I'll do the Flayed Tantra as well. What do I have the most of? I guess health in this case. And then what I can do here is I can do the Velletri interviews. And I'll just get that off my plate. Okay. I think we're good. Oh, I was a little early to combine up all the different cards. Oh, well, that's fine. Okay, an afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. It is autumn when the leaves rustle. The silent landlady has served me apple pie with steamed cream in the window nook. The Road to Janus. The Limian Burzgash makes a series of prophecies regarding the initiates of the House of Silence, with intricate, if unhelpful, predictions on their passage through the house. The sixth initiate is Priest and Key, Gate and Church. He shall cross the sea and open the tide. He shall not be the 11th, yet there shall be 7 between them. In the first year of his time, the flower door is opened. The 12th initiate is Salvation and Rack, Steed and Rider, who chooseth one blossom of 3, who casteth away the key, and whom the key shall not cast away, who comes after the flame and before the snow. The Crossing to Noon. The mystic Garcia Sauri gives a picturesque account of the adventures of Franklin Bancroft, Prince of Wines, and Ava de Wolf, the Pale Lady, on their way to the hidden island of Noon. For a long, long time, the Blackbone pondered her next move, until the moon dared to peep from behind a cloud, and the prince completed the composition of his third sestina. But the lady met the blind gaze of its open pores, waiting for the tide. Garcia Sauri acknowledges in an epilogue that it is widely known that Ava in fact tragically drowned herself, and her twin infant granddaughters, without ever making such a journey. But he adds contemptuously, it is also widely known that the city unbuilt will so remain, that only one history is ever written, and that Janus is a Mansus prank. I should probably start writing down these ones that mention the city unbuilt. It's not a major one here, but should probably just tuck it away. The Deaths of the Moon, a historical tract on various forms of survival after death. When the heart no longer beats, the Grail may keep the spirit in the body, and an appetite is indicated to sustain. Alukites are the best known, but not the only of this nature. This is the waning moon mode. The full moon mode is the intensification of one element of the soul to the point where ordinary sustention is unstable. Our protector, the generous of hosts, began of this nature, and its generosity remains ungentle. It is possible for the body's health or the heart's core to outpace the other elements, so that a static mode becomes impossible, and growth proceeds in dramatic stages until balance remanifests. The sea does not regret. Eason Fekri, one-time Secretary Salvant of the Curia of the Isle, responsible for the Curia's healing efforts, writes of his experiences in Brandkrug and hints at his travels elsewhere. The sea does not regret the tide, Fekri writes, for when the tide is past, it leaves its traces on the sand, which traces are the sea's memory. Fekri is a keen fisherman and speaks glowingly of the fish suppers of Brandkrug. He also admits that his enthusiasm for the bounty of the sea has altered him, that before he came to Brandkrug he consumed only those things found in the earth. I was the greater thereby, but all of us give up what we were to become what we are. The Queen's Turn, a 16th century translation of the Barrowchild's account of Lagia's turn, when Lagia, the queen unsated, was offered the opportunity to enter the service of the Hours of the Triple Knot as long as she repudiated her brother-lover Antaios. Lagia accepts, setting aside the arts of the low red sun associated with Antaios. She bargains, however, for freedom for her daughters. The Hours of the Triple Knot accept casually, knowing that Lagia has devoured her daughters, but while Lagia has decided, in the secret hollow of her heart, that she will adopt any who ask if they can prove their fierceness. The traditions described here, the ones generally described as hill and hollow, are associated with Lagia before her turn, but now that she is a name of the Red Grail, they might also be safely used before an altar of the Triple Knot. The Velletri interviews. Interrogation of a man named Lacombe, a former Nocturnal Branch inspector, now identified as terminally robogoid. Lacombe is not especially lucid, and the state called robogoia evidently includes a malady of the lungs which causes coughing fits. He weakens audibly over the course of the interrogation. He is questioned about the disposition of various unsanctioned items recovered from a Nocturnal Branch raid on the castle at Ortuccio in the region of the Fucine Marshes. He is, however, defiant as well as incoherent. Lacombe insists that the items have been put to good use. He derides Nocturnal Branch as the lackeys of Calyptra. Alarmingly, during the last few minutes of the interrogation, he begins to insist that his interrogator should burn the library. He waxes enthusiastic about the fire he wants to see, leading to a final coughing fit, after which the interview abruptly ends. The Voyages of Furnishon of Auriel, the impossible travels of a sea captain of the late Phoenician era, suppressed throughout recorded history. Those who read it were said to disappear. Furnishon clearly visited the Mansus, sailing the length of the Painted River. He also claims to have traversed the sea of finest sand, to have dared the blazing waves of the sun's surface, and to have descended to an underworld ocean lit by lamps of black nephrite. Furnishon's final voyage is to retirement on a peaceful island across an evening sea, where he identifies a spring whose waters will keep him safe. "I will be forgotten," he declares, "and this work my only trace." The Incandescent Tantra. Michael Blockley, the eccentric iron magnate, was fond of quoting from this tantra. Blockley died in a factory fire. Dialogues with an entity called the Crucible Prince. The prince warns about the appetites of his mistress, the Burning Queen, and the peril of the naked desire she shares with the sun, but professes his loyalty nevertheless. A right which changes is necessarily a right which destroys, but a great change requires a destruction of savage extent. The Leonine Tantra. In the most notorious translation of the Leonine Tantra, Ashley Phillips is listed as the translator, but their existence is explicitly denied in the prologue. This confusion is characteristic of books which mention the Great Hooded Princes. The Tantra describes, elliptically, the Great Hooded Princes and the multitudinous ways in which they influenced wars against foreign invaders of the land of the Great River, although, in a sense, they were also invaders. Lions can be created not as children are created, nor as words are created, but as weapons are created. The Great Hooded Princes learnt to create lions from their spyings on the affairs of the Hours, and not all lions now serve the Golden General. And finally, the consider verb. The Flayed Tantra. This tantra is recorded as being spoken by an enigmatic individual identified as Peel, with many of the qualities of the mythological Naga. The flayed tantra played a notable part in Alexander Sparrow's paranoid pamphleteering. Peel was numbered among the great hooded princes, but it breaks with its brethren and follows the Thunderskin in The Endless Dance. Once Peel had peeled itself, it had the ink it needed to write the Tantra. It had to face the wrath of its fellows. Here is the invocation it used to fend them off. Okay. We did the, Sweet Bones. I think we'll start up here and we'll move throughout the room before moving on. So this is going to be the fear shelves. I'd also like to read all the letters in the secret folder at some point as well too, but it feels... I don't know if that's something I'm going to do today. I think I've read all of them at least once on stream, but it would be nice to do them as a big block, particularly with my current goal in mind. Did I forget the... No, we're good. I think I messed up my order a little bit, but... Okay, I'm just going to make a note here. Key of Night. I should be able to get at least one more round of books in. Oh, sorry, no. Not Key of Night. Oh man, I haven't been using core at all. Black Nephrite. Alright, on we go. Better now. So I'll turn this into money. Again, we don't exactly need the money, but it's a nice to have. Seven Faces of Icarus. In the early 1530s, the last abbot of St. Brendan's, called Roaring Richard, set down his conversations with the illiterate local cunning man, Red William. Red William describes the 7 forms in which he goes about and under the world: viper, cat, fox, eagle, dove, boar, and crow. Abbot Richard ingeniously fits these all into a framework of solar belief. According to Abbot Richard, each of Red William's forms is closer to the sun and is increasingly winged with virtue. Richard draws an analogy with the waxen wings of Icarus. Hypocrisy and false virtue will melt before the sun's heat, and so sincerity and untrammeled expression of the self are the utmost piety. It's worth noting that only a year or two after Richard wrote this book, John Tregonwell was so appalled by the debaucheries of the monks of St. Brendan's that he recommended the monastery's immediate dissolution. The treatise on underplaces. Herein, the 17th century mystic and antiquarian Claude Hersault describes the bounds or underplaces on the borders of dream. He warns that they shift over time. The walls of the mansus, Hersault begins, are the size of starlight. Many of his directions are equally unhelpful, but common relationships do emerge. A picturesque account of a journey through nightmare, interspersed with what might be partial rites. On the 18th ascent is the bud, on the 36th ascent, the blossom. Stolen Histories. The agitator and pamphleteer Alexander Sparrow inveighs against the monstrous serpents, thieves of history. Sparrow acknowledges 5 histories, insists the 3rd history may be overrun by coils, and warns the 5th history is already lost. Sparrow, with his usual paranoia, appears to be conflating the horror of the Worm Wars and the Great Writhing with the activities of the Great Hooded Princes. Still, he draws thought-provoking comparisons between the princes, normally conceived as exotic knocklong, and the widely feared worms. Medusa's lament on the death of the hour called Seven Coils, the father of the mother. The first part of the poem describes the ambush of the Seven Coils by a warrior scarred all over by the traitor gods, scarred even unto his eyes, so that the sight of the great coils would not destroy him. The battle rages on until the Seven Coils drowns in its own blood, at which point the narrative turns mystical and elusive. A seven-titled goddess arises from the foam of its blood. She is an armored queen, a serpent daughter, a key, a healer, a murderess, an oracle, but her seventh title is not to be revealed. Skin of Silver, the epic final battle of the Lionsmith with the remnant giant Antaios. As always, the Lionsmith drew his strength from metal and Antaios from stone, but the Lionsmith began to suspect also that this time Antaios was drawing power from the moon. The Lionsmith beseeches the three for their assistance, and the Meniscate favors him with a skin of silver, like water, like mercury, so he too can drink power from the moon. For, she whispers, he too will one day be drawn into a perfect balance. The Viennese Conundra. Vandriel describes odd events in Vienna, the disappearance of children, epidemics of parasite activity, animal mutilations, nightmares of worms, the activities of a charitable organization, the New Legions, that funds the burial of the poor. She proposes peculiar connections between these activities. When the individual K attends the meetings, black dogs are sacrificed and quartered. When the element M is in attendance, black mares are found with their throats slashed. I propose that these sacrifices are not necessary, but that our Legion friends may consider them fitting. Herewith, diagrams of the mutilations. Medusa's riddle, then, I choose to render as what is not seen. There is another riddle, one I have heard rendered as what may be lost. I will delineate some historic attempts to answer it. These are, in themselves, in some sense, sacrifices. The Tantra of Worms. The entomologist Juliana Zawadzowski eventually came to insist that this text was written by insects inhabiting a human skin. She never presented evidence for her claim. There are diagrams. The diagrams are not good to look upon. The Tantra explains various less than practical countermeasures against the worms, the serpents which are not serpents. Moth and Winter are closest to them, and so understand their weaknesses, but both have their own perils. The Lionsmith crushes them, but that's not recommended for mortals. The worms have always been eager to inhabit us. Here are practices which make us inhospitable to them. There are diagrams. The diagrams are not good to look upon, and none of the practices they show would allow the subject to survive. The Sun's Lament, the first volume of the Meditations of Abbot Thomas of the Abbey of the Black Dove. The thorn-beaked crows took my eyes from me in justice for my crimes, but though I lost my sight, I found my light. Abbot Thomas speaks of the breaking of his oaths to his sword brother Trygeave and to the Lord of Scars that he served before he came to the abbey. He writes of the power of oath bonds and considers the means and morality of their sundering. And The Key of Night, the deliberations leading to a manifesto of the Worms of a Scale as recorded around 1900 in the bar Vienna in the cellar of the Hotel Ciervo in Noon. So that's going to be one that I write down. The worms, all of whom use grandiose nom de guerre like Citizen Knife and the Midnight Pilgrim, agree that all previous iterations of their movement have been feckless and treacherous, and agree that the return of the pre-human hours, the gods from stone, is the true way to end the tyranny of eternity. Vanguard Master, good to see you. How are you doing tonight? The worms identify the wheel, the tide, the flint, Sulochana, the spider door, the excellency Nathobasis, and Wickle Indistinguishable as the 7 necessary pentiments that must be returned to every history through the propaganda of the deed. This is an eccentric list and clearly a compromise. The process of thrashing it out clearly exhausts all the participants who don't specify the necessary deed beyond a vague reference to the loopholes. Oh, very nice. What's the weather like where you are? It's been ridiculously cold here. We had a brief reprieve, but I'm taking a look at the forecast for the next little while, and so it's currently minus 17 right now. Tomorrow it goes from minus 5, which I can live. Hey, Jay, how you doing? And then drops to minus 19. But Sunday we get a nice range of -8 to -1. Hey, Isley. Yeah, no, I started late, so we've got about half an hour left, but I'm actually happy to see all of you here. So yeah, Sunday and Monday we get a brief reprieve, but then Tuesday it's like 17 to -1, Wednesday 17 to -8, and then Thursday and Friday have lows of like -22 and -25. So I'm like, why did we build the capital here? We don't go above 1 until like, I don't know, 2 Sundays from now. I'm a big whiner when it comes to this stuff. Wind is killing us. Yeah, no, I know those winds. Actually, the one thing that I feel a little... So, I've had a couple of days. I did go out. I didn't have a camera with me, which I felt bad about. Well, I had my phone, but my phone basically... Whenever we have a sufficiently cold day, and like particularly with a really bad wind, I find it just shreds my battery. But there was one night where it was preposterously cold, but it had also been snowing a bit, and the wind was just something else. And there's a couple things I found about it. So it was like just after there'd been a bit of a thaw. So it's like, it'd gone from like positive. So there was like a bit of, there'd basically kind of been a bit of a melt, but then it just like dropped right back down to the negative numbers, big wind, lots of snow. And so because it's just completely miserable to be out there, there'd be these, any like kind of empty lots would just have this pure snow over it, which looked great. But I also remember seeing some trees, like some bare branches, that were perfectly encased in ice. So like for those of you who maybe have played Sunless Sea, and there's that description, there's actually some descriptions of it too in Cultist Simulator, of these areas entirely of glass. Like that's definitely what came to mind when I saw that. It was incredibly beautiful to look at, particularly in sort of at night when there's only sort of these slashes of light that are lighting them. But like, it was really something that I could only appreciate for a limited period of time, because I did not want to be staying out in that. A couple weeks ago, you were at the rig, you went to the bed in the morning, it was warm blue sky, everything melting, mud everywhere, and then when you woke up in the evening for your shift, you had about a foot of snow and everything was frozen. Your truck almost didn't start. Yeah, it was ridiculous. The weather should just settle on one temperature, and then we can decide whether or not we want to live in those areas. Okay, I think we're on to Black Nephrite, if I'm not mistaken. We are indeed. Oh, while I'm queuing these up, I'll also say that on my reading notes, so I finished Foundation. That was the first time I read Foundation. Loved it. The other books are on order. The other two, I realize there's more than just the two, but I wanted to read the original trilogy. But one of the reasons why I wanted to read Foundation at this particular time was my coworker really likes Dune. Now, he really likes Dune, the movie. I don't believe he's read the book. But I have read Dune. And I've actually I haven't seen the new movie, but I have seen the 1984, I think it was 84, the David Lynch one. So I'm familiar with the plot, but what I really wanted to do this time was I wanted to read Foundation, one, because it's like one of those things I really feel like I should have read by now. There's a lot of books like that. But on top of that, I know a lot of people talk about Dune as sort of this response to Foundation. So I did want to sort of read it in that light, and definitely, it's a perfectly enjoyable book in its own right, but I'm definitely getting another set of I'm getting another perspective, sort of having read a bit more of the science fiction that came before, so I'm really enjoying it in that right as well. If only this was Star Wars, you could have your own ice planet, your beach planet, jungle planet, my city planet. Oh, and we can all... No, we can't get the sevenfold slaying. That's an IOU. Oh, I also need... So, Berry Books also on an IOU. So, the Red Book of Brittany. So particularly want to make notes of these ones because tomorrow in-game we're going to host the Salon, and then, in fact, the Salon will probably be the thing that I finish the stream on. So I imagine I'm going to get to these books on Monday. Should also read, so for The Affair of the Particular Mystique, we had Yvette. Dr. Southey refused the blandishments of the cult called the Ivory Dawn, but suspected that they honored her by reason of a pre-immortal in her ancestry. It wasn't clear what Zachary Wakefield intended with the new crop of cults, but it was clear that it was nothing especially constructive. Lieutenant Moore dared to hope that he might begin to understand the Sun's plan, and Fraser Strathcoyne believed that something had drawn the Obliviots, the Long who'd secluded themselves in Port Noon, back to the world. Black Nephrite, one of Valentine de Wolf's dream journals, in which he records his visions of a place that is no place beneath the house that is no house. The dark, inchoate, feral space described by Valentine seems to be the nowhere of the invisible arts, the infra-oniric layer of the alien hours sometimes called gods from nowhere. Valentine's attitude towards the nowhere hours is unexpectedly relaxed. He speaks darkly of their appetites, but he insists that they are too alien to penetrate the house of the sun, let alone the waking world. He even seems to suggest that the Mansus hours have exaggerated the threat of the nowhere hours for their own reasons. Not all birds are trustworthy in their feathers, he warns. A True History of Valentine de Wolfe, written in the third person by Valentine de Wolfe. Rarely coherent, though it includes some useful footnotes on falconry and on exotic veterinary medicine. Valentine is obsessed with the meaning of the de Wolfe coat of arms, on a field or a chevron in arched gulls between two corby heads, raised sable in chief and a wolf sagant sable in base. Long have the two birds pursued my blood, yet one is no crow, yet it is darker. Long has the wolf rolled itself in gold like a clovered cow, until its slobberings stain our thoughts. The deeds of the scarred captain, painstakingly assembled by the soldier of fortune and sometimes remittance man, Pavel Shulga, during his years in Greece. An account on the founding of Mycenae by a scarred captain, who first slew 7 monsters to make the land safe. As the captain destroys each monster, a flood of blood rises higher until at last a priestess drowns and is reborn as a serpent goddess. She blesses the captain, and he departs for the house above the forest, leaving Mycenae to reign supreme after the flood of blood subsides. Nix Abolix, a grim treatise on those feasts that occur, those feasts that are not to be witnessed. The Alokites, who feasted on their children and became monsters. The dragonkinds among the Carapace cross, who feasted on our flesh and became monsters. The Calavites, who drank of Echidna's bounty and became monsters. Marinette, the Legion, so young, so hungry, all her children cannot slake her thirst. When Moth rose, another held the flaying key, but at the Grail's bidding did Marinette consume that she. Hunting Journals of Brian DeWolf. Brian DeWolf, the son of the third Baron Brandkrug, gives advice on hunting in the Bounds. It is clear from Brian's journals that he sought unorthodox... It is clear from Brian's journals that he sought unorthodox trophies and put them to unorthodox uses. He was in fact hanged as a witch at the age of 24 and never inherited the estate. Brian describes how a sky-inspired fife can be prepared using these fur and feathers techniques in the presence of greater sky aspect to make the winds good neighbors. It's a powerful technique to be described so casually. Brian's main interest seems to be ensuring good weather for his hunts. 1000 Threads, the fate supplications of the matriarch of the well, recorded in darkness by her weavers and her daughters. The well is long choked with rubble and ashes, the matriarch long gone. She predicted her own end even as these supplications were recorded, but their power remains. She speak these supplications before an altar whose roots have drawn from a sacred spring, and perhaps another root will rise towards daylight. The Book of True Blood. Cassius the Tomman reveals the deeds of the Unnumbered Legion, the secret army that protected Rome against the Shadowless Empire. The Legion's legate answered directly to the hour called the Tribune of Scars and was promised immortality if he died in battle. In the final part, Cassius offers to being a former legate. He recounts his terror of the Tribune and divulges the secret lore of the Golden General, the champion of the Shadowless Empire, the enemy of the Tribune, in hope that the Tribune will someday be undone. The Journal of Sir David Green, 1903, a confidential journal kept by Green, former Nocturnal Branch Superintendent, but by 1903 Librarian of the House. Green has kept his journal in Hyksos, presumably as an extra measure of privacy. In 1903, the House cooperated closely with the branch, and Green was the public face of that cooperation. In private, however, Green is clearly disillusioned with the branch, which he increasingly regards as irresponsible. He is especially concerned about the construction of a suppressive mechanism beneath Brandkrug Jail and its likely occupant. Hours and names are dangerous, he writes, but at least our dealings have the benefit of long experience. An hour who acts before she is born, who leaves those places she has never entered, if her names walk the world already, how can we understand their courses and their capabilities? The last entries alternate between calculations, tides, dates, financial calculations, and expressions of fevered longing for AF. It seems that Green intends to run away with AF, and some of the calculations imply that he has been embezzling funds to that end, under the cover of chaos caused by the Ortuccio incident and the subsequent reorganization of Nocturnal Branch into the Suppression Bureau. The entries, however, stop abruptly before the year's end. It's not clear whether Green did in fact abscond with funds and fond friend, or whether he abandoned his journal for other reasons. And the Callicite Supplications, prayers addressed to the Red Grail by the Sisterhood of the Triple Knot. If we should remember not, let our children be remembered in their redmost dreams. One prayer describes how a sufficient Grail aspect can be used with Tridesma Hyra to give life, a little life to a doll twisted from fabric. Okay, so we'll speed through night, but we're going to slow down for the next day. And again, our aim here is not... our aim here is not going to be reading books, it's going to be the Salon. So Reverend Timothy enjoys thoughtful conversation, prayer, and tea. He'll offer his assistance in return for a 1 shilling donation to church funds. This is my first time inviting Reverend Timothy. Invite the rector to a salon. Invite Reverend Timothy up to Hush House. Patience, thus the mountain awaits the fall of the snow, thus Monday awaits the death of the weekend, thus the postmistress waits for me to purchase the necessary stamp. Stamp, envelope, send. Postmistress examines the letter and deems it sufficient. It'll go with the next post, she assures me. There's a reason I'm doing this weird combination here. Shucks. Reverend Timothy is almost speechless with excitement. Almost. Reverend Timothy visiting. Reverend Timothy will attend the next salon with a freshly starched clerical collar. That's a sneaky way that I can get more or less the order that I want. I have to mess with these again, but it is autumn when the leaves rustle. The silent landlady has served me apple pie with steamed cream in the window nook. Okay, so we'll hasten the arrival of our guests. We do need to wait for winter, excuse me. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. So now we just need to wait for the afternoon, but we will review our guests. Magister Hokebald, Phaedra Strathcoin, Kokil Amirajibi, and Damon. There we go. Midday before the Great Division. This was the 6th hour when the priests led hymns to the sun and splendor. Now noon, as they say, is not as it was. Perhaps the new king will change that. So, the attendees. Reverend Timothy. Reverend Timothy will attend the next salon with a freshly starched clerical collar. Magister Hokebald, metallurgist, gourmet, corrupted immortal, and supposedly a long-ago king's byblow. Mr. Fraser Strathcoin, philanthropist, collector, former librarian, a complicated man, but not a cruel one. Princess Kokil Amirajibi, artist, socialite, burglar, an unspeakably charming woman with a particular knack for getting adopted, and she does indeed prefer Grail. Hokebald prefers forge. I should actually be writing this down, so... And Damer, Grafin Frederike Dagmar Sophia Teresa Helena Begina von Nagelsberg, if you prefer. She doesn't. They will be enjoying roast beef. Our fathers of old were robust, stout, and strong, and kept open house with good cheer all day long, which made their plump tenants rejoice in this song. Oh, the roast beef of old England, and old English roast beef. Henry Fielding, The Grub Street Opera. Game chips, long before fish and chips, these went crunchily with game. Ideally, you'd want bread sauce and bread crumbs to complete the ensemble, but honestly, it's hard enough not to just stuff these directly into your mouth. Baked apple meringue. Harvey Hattington, during his convalescence at the house, was so obsessed with meringuing techniques that he was ultimately banned from the kitchen. Roast potatoes. You really need rosemary for roast potatoes, but fortunately the kitchen garden at Hush House has never been short on rosemary. And poached mackerel. We do not poach fish in Brandkrug without recalling the turbot crisis of 1786, when Dr. Westcott caught a prodigious turbot and required the kitchen to poach it for him without division, but no vessel of sufficient size could be found to poach it entire. At last they resorted to alchemical assistance. Mackerel, fortunately, requires no alchemy for its poaching. And for drinks, they will be enjoying Domaine Reveline. The Revelines abandoned their lands, and yet someone is still making this wine. Schloss Jannings, a dry aromatic white wine. Cater and Hero Second Flesh Assam, tea from the land of the real unicorn, imported by Cater and Hero, and Witching to Saint, to mend a broken heart, to color a pale soul. Here the whole curia used to meet, the librarian and the secretary solvent, vigilant, and enigmatic, sometimes even the secretary nunciant, though the duties of that office usually kept him away from the house. But there has only ever been one secretary persistent, and she has never liked to eat in company. That was in the good times of the curia's heyday. In later years, the governor of the jail would sit at one end and the librarian at the other, and the clock would tick away the long silences between their words. The room where once the curia met, a fitting venue for a salon. Nope. Did I forget the forage drink? So Reverend Timothy gets anything. Strathcoyne has his scale. Coquille has her grail. I'll confess it's a little odd that that's the one that I got wrong, but I don't care where you go, I just need you not where you are. Can I get away directly dumping this on the... All right. Well, one of the things that I can do, I can move the Veiled Goddess Lapsang Souchong. Nope. That'll do. Yeah, I was a little optimistic it would fit. My guests take their places for lunch. Keep an eye on the salon as it progresses. You will need to add soul cards to encourage the conversation to flow. Different guests will need different soul cards. The more guests, the longer the salon will last. Lunch and supper last longer than less formal salons, allowing you an extra interaction between your guests. More time remaining. Inject a little gaiety. Add a core card. I think I can give the Sweet Bones a miss while I'm going through the salon. It'd be nice to keep the continuity with the events. Bad cup of tea. No staying inside for you today. Dagmar and Coquille's conversations about the great signs and the great scars is repeatedly disrupted by Dagmar's attempts to introduce Coquille to a very nice Margrave. Oh, Dagmar wanted to introduce Coquille to a friend. Alright, so that's another interaction we can combine. Raise a complex question. Add a whist card. Hokebald and Dagmar discuss the work of Willem Harries, with particular reference to lintels and thresholds. Hokebald's habitual air of contempt thins. He listens with real interest to Dagmar's answers, but Dagmar retains a careful distance, and, after he arranges her plate and teaspoon to illustrate her point, she eyes them sidelong and does not touch them again. Invite a challenge. Add a metal card. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. There we go. Coquille and Fraser discuss the Great Hooded Princes and Princesses transition between histories. He asks whether there were Carapace Cross still active in the 5th history, but she will not answer him. Inject a little gaiety, add the core card. Coquille is flirting outrageously with Hokebald. His head is tilted to one side, and he is staring at her with a furnace gaze that might equally indicate lust or hunger. His mouth is stringed with saliva. I was hoping to provoke an interaction between Reverend Timothy and Hokebald, but say something witty, add a Shapt card. Hokebald is... Oh, here we go! Hokebald is pressing Reverend Timothy on the new king, particularly on the claims by some prelates that he may be associated with the Second Dawn, even though that might seem to conflict with the received version of the Book of Sons. Hokebald's aim is clearly malice. Timothy clearly realizes this, and he is also clearly quite frightened of Hokebald. He remains polite, although pale and unusually quiet. Instinct and emotion. Add a tryst card. Fraser asks Coquille to advise him on some Eastern pieces he has recently purchased, which he hopes may be pentiments of the 6th history. A lively meal concludes. My guests leave happy. You've gained an additional potent memory. Just double checking that Fraser's the only one who... Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right. Just double checking that Fraser's the only one who's currently inspired. Okay. My Tristshot core metal. We get door and wall. I've gained more understanding of door and wall. Dagmor wanted to introduce Kokil to a friend. These two might say something else on the matter if you invite them both back for another salon. Daymare, Kokil, Mr. Fraser Strathcoin, departing guest, a lively salon, satisfaction, a curious hunch, pentiments and precursors, purifications and exaltations, desires and dissolutions, pentiments and precursors again, and great signs and great scars. So there's a small chance that I might be able to level these things up. So I think pentiments and precursors, the first one would be for Inks of Containment. That's actually the last of the level 5s. After that, I think it would be Resurgences and Emergences. Nope, Orchids and Narcotics. Purifications and Exaltations would be Sky Stories. It'd be a little weird not to use Desires and Dissolutions on itself. Okay, yeah, so Desires and Dissolutions and Great Signs and Great Scars. So basically we'd need 6 memories. Actually, you know what? Let's give this a shot. So if I were to try and level up Great Signs and Greats... Let me actually move these around. So Orchids and Narcotics... Great Signs and Great Scars, Desires and Dissolutions, Inks of Containment stays put. Okay, so if I were to try to raise Great Signs and Great Scars, let's see if I could actually pull off 6 Knock and Grail. So 1, 2, 3. Technically 4 here. Let's say 3 for now. 4. 5. Oh yeah, 6. No, we could definitely do that. Okay. I'm hoping I don't miss out on... What am I doing? I'm hoping I don't lose the element of the soul that I used to like level this up tomorrow. If I do, you know, it is what it is, but I feel like this is a chance worth taking. Okay. Actually just need the 5. So we already have the satisfaction. But the gossip... Oh no, that's impulse. Where's my gossips? Oh, I also neglected door and wall, so that's forge and knock. That's an interesting dilemma. Okay, so I'm going to change this around a little bit. I'm also going to add sea stories to the list. So we can use Door and Wall to level up Great Signs and Great Scars. We can use Great Signs and Great Scars to level up sea stories. Level 9 to everything or bust. I don't know how I feel about that. So this is going to put my this is going to put my effort to read all the books on a little bit of a pause. I'm thinking I'm going to lose these elements of the soul for the next day. It's all good. I mean, it's not the... Or sorry, no, it's one element of the soul that I'll lose. So, Shapt or Arab? I guess Arab is the one I'm a little more comfortable giving up. But I do have 2 Grail. Yeah, no, I should give up the Shapt in this case. Okay. The Temptations of Architecture. The antiquarian and nyctodromist Ambrose Westcott writes of the dangers of doors, with particular reference to a house in the bounds named Treowen. No doubt they have come to regret the ambitions of their winding stair even now in Treowen. A silver sea is unwisely visible from a rash window. Westcott explains that the wheel locks, the charge holders of Treowen, have had recourse to dramatic measures to prevent oniric encroachment, removing the entire top floor of the building. Nevertheless, he writes, the business of the Moon Hall has begun to touch the other business of the house. The account of Kanishk at the Spider's Door. Loch Kahuli, Kanishk's victim and lover, wrote this account, perhaps posthumously. Kanishk sought to become a name. In pursuit of that end, he made Loch Kahuli the vessel of his appetites, promising Loch that they would ascend together. At the Spider's Door, he betrayed his lover. The Chiliarch listened to it happen and then forced Kanishk into his service. The Chiliarch cannot be denied. Loch Kahuli remained to write this work and to describe the outer magics of struggle and contest. The Wind's Ruin, the second volume of the Meditations of Abbot Thomas of the Abbey of the Black Dove. Abbot Thomas speaks of his time as a raider, when his name was not Thomas but Toke, scything the sea, striving for plunder. Abbot Thomas clearly regrets his storm years, and much of the book is taken up with his thoughts on penitence, but there are hints that he also misses those years and the companionship of his sword brother, ship brother, Trygeave. The Other Line, one of Samuel Savage's more thoughtful works, an allegorical play about the city Clarity, a city that is also a book, and the sentences which inhabit it. The Lord's Proverbial and the Lord's Disquisitional war in the streets of Clarity, while the punctuants get drunk on ink and supply the jokes, though by Savage's usual standards there aren't very many jokes. The final act sees the Lord's Proverbial unsealing the city Clarity's gate to expel the population into the unknown. The formula that they use for the unsealing is a real one. It can be used with knock and preliminal meter to create a gate sign of power. That's not good. I have an outside option, but what's the deal here? Oh, what? Nope. That's my bad. That was clearly labeled Confounding Parables. I was thinking this line that I needed. Okay. This might be useful for one of the future ones, so I will sleep on it. Against Vitruvius, a 14th century treatise on esoteric mechanics and parahydraulics by Abbot Ranulf, best known as a Mason architect. Ranulf describes how he tested some of these techniques in the construction of the Winter Tower, now called the Long Tower. He admits to unexpected consequences. Ranulf mentions that the Tower of Ely Cathedral collapsed around the time the Winter Tower was completed, although he stops short of suggesting that one was the cause of another. A tower falls, a tower rises is all he will commit to. Okay, so we'll take Sea Stories. Right. We can't do that to Sea Stories. We need to do this to Great Signs and Great Scars, but I'm using Door and Wall. My bad. And because I messed up, we'll use the Curious Hunch. So I think I'll make a couple of notes on how I plan to use the memories, just so I don't go completely bananas. And I think we'll wrap it up for tonight. Right, memories fade, assistance departs, but the soul is refreshed. So, we were going to use pentiments and precursors. Oh, sorry. I have a little coffee on my pen. There we go. All right, so pentiments and precursors was going to go to orchids and narcotics. And then resurgences and emergences. Purifications and exaltations. That was going to strings and songs, wasn't it? Desires and dissolutions to itself. And Great Science and Great Cigars now goes to... oh, hang on. No, it goes to Sea Stories. Okay. So one of the things that helps me out for the future here, I did want to... I have on my IOU list the Sevenfold Slaying of the Seven Coiled and the Berry Book. The Berry Book gets me satisfaction, so I can actually use that, towards leveling up either orchids and narcotics, resurgences and emergences, or desires and dissolutions, or sea stories for that matter, actually. So lots of opportunities to get the satisfaction that I need from that. In fact, I also seem to recall that we were working on the satisfaction, so we can sort of indirectly make progress through this shelf, even though ostensibly we're leveling up these skills. Sevenfold Saying of the Seven Coiled. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to need Edge and Scale. None of those skills really apply for these. But that's fine. We can always read that later. We should also be expecting a book from Oriflammes before too long. So I think probably while we're working on our current batch, I'll maybe also I'll buy the book and read it while we're leveling up the skills. And then the hope is that we have enough time between finishing the level ups and winter, the next season, that I'm going to be able to finish the remaining shelves. So we basically have this half here. We have this entire library. We have this shelf here, and then we'll have the films and the audio, which is split between two different areas. So it's not... oh, sorry. Oh, no, I think I already mentioned this one. It's not impossible. Sorry, we also have the Newman tag. I'll make these ones at the very end because that's arguably going to be where I pick a history to write down. So it's not impossible for me to be able to to read all of these in time, but it's definitely going to be a tight window in which I'm going to be able to do everything. I'm still going to run with the plan of working down all of the food that I've kind of got stored up here. I think I've got too much stuff in the house, so being able to clear out the various rooms is not a bad idea. I did finish my fall salon, so I'll clear out the invitation list. So that was Fraser's, Coquille, Daymare, Hokebald, and Timothy. For winter, I was planning on inviting Corso, Yvette, Wakefield, Aaron Peel, and Douglas Moore. And then in spring, I'll invite... Oh, hang on. Why is Aaron in here twice? Was it Eason I was thinking of? Oh, right. I was bringing Aaron and Douglas because I wanted to see... I think I wanted the interactions between the two of them. Of course, now I have Douglas and Shaw. Oh, right. Okay, so that's why Schaler's in the next one. Okay. So I guess technically my new core invitation would be Douglas, Aaron, Schaler, Daymare, and Coquille. And then I have a spare spot for someone else. What I actually want to do is just have more variety of guests coming in over time. I have a few different salons in mind. But... that's something for later. In terms of our overall goal for getting some books on Noon, The City Unbuilt, and Ys, we actually have at least one book for every category. So for Noon, currently we're looking at The Voyages of Furnish and of Oriel, The Carbonic Schism, Crossing to Noon, no surprises there, and The Key of Night. For Ys, we have Ava's Treasury. And then for The City Unbuilt, we have The Messenger Awaiting Her Destination, also The Crossing to Noon. So there'll be... I have a feeling there'll be a few other things that I look at, not just books, but I'd like to also investigate things like the Amber, so Sunset's Colors, Pine's Blood. I would like to take a look at... It's not this... Or is it this painting? No, that's a bargain. This painting, Carries. And then I think I'd like to make the Orichalcum and maybe study it as well. So in any case, there's a few different things that I'd like to investigate in terms of some of the different threads that we can pull. But of course, all of that is for a future episode. Thank you everybody for hanging out with me, especially with such a late stream. Can't believe we're at the end of January already. I'm going to try and get an early start on the... I'm going to try and get an early start on the YouTube videos for the House of Light run that I'm doing on... sorry, for the full House of Light run, but that's mostly just so I can try and set aside a few of the other, set aside some time for a few of the other things that I wanted to do. Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Have a good night. I do see that Prosciutto Fist is still playing Death's Door, so I'm going to send you over to her neck of the woods. Prosciutto Fist is someone who I found. Sorry, I just need to get the raid message down right. So Prosciutto Fist is somebody who I originally found playing Book of Hours. I don't think she plays it that much anymore, although of course you all can bully her into doing so. But she's definitely got quite a bit more energy in her stream than I do, and she's really been enjoying Death's Door. I know she likes Hades a lot, and it definitely feels like that game sort of matches the kind of the style that she enjoys. So it's always nice to watch a broadcaster play a game that they enjoy. So I'll leave you all in her capable hands. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you all Monday for more Book of Hours, particularly our search for Noon and Ys texts. Until then, take care.